was recently, apparently, that they found it. How did they get down there? He said they made some things that shot large plastic bags of water down that 3-mile chute as they dig the chute, and then they flash boil it with microwaves.
Несколько дней уже играю на Manskай, очень прям хорошо, очень нравится. Куча очень вариантов, что можно сделать. Ну, еще не до конца здесь развился во всех отношениях, но достаточно глубоко во многих. Там очень базово развился серьезно. Вряд ли буду особо комментировать. Я сейчас слушаю записи в реальном мире и так далее. То есть, ну, в принципе, то есть мы реально сейчас находимся в такой же ситуации, что и на Manskай, только об этом никому не известно. Но в ближайшее время, скорее всего, будет гораздо более известно. Вот, соответственно, я слушаю. Понятно, что сейчас большинство не готовы это воспринимать, и тем не менее, значит, мне это интересно. Ну, соответственно, в игре сейчас я планирую построить подводную базу, потому что без меня нет. И заодно Nautilus остальное, что есть уже сам все машинки. Просто производство сейчас окучу. Хорошо запускаю. Другой.
And they eliminate the first 40 feet of ice on top of these things of snow. So in other words, the bag gets dropped, they have very high-powered microwaves, they hit the bag with the waves, suddenly it turns into steam, and the steam evaporates the ice. And that's how they dig down to the craft. I explained this to Corey, he said, wow, you weren't supposed to know that either. Then they followed it with pictures. Uh-huh. So they start taking pictures of the craft. Obviously, we're not seeing them. They found round ports, rectangular ports, square ports, knobs, antenna bumps, sensor bumps, telescope bumps. This was a huge thing. It was obviously a craft. Craft were taking off from two different directions, the front and the back of the mothership. It had little holes in it where craft would go in and out. The craft would come in from two directions, and they would cross over one on top of the other inside the craft on conveyor belts. So this was a little bit more complex than what he explained. I'll give it to you in more detail. He said some are on the top half of the craft, and other on the bottom. So what this means is the craft has a hole on one side, a hole on the other side. There's a conveyor belt with sockets in the shape of different types of UFOs. The UFO literally drops into the craft, it sits in the socket nicely, and then the conveyor belt moves forward and another socket shows up, and then that one pops in, and it goes on and on like this. And what was amazing was that I go back to Corey with all this stuff. Well, let's get to that in a second. First, he had more to say. Those things, these motherships, will take craft that we've already seen and call UFOs, and they actually can hold them inside. The motherships are set to hold a craft that would be the shape and size of sliding panels that slide around on this thing. Sometimes, I was typing so fast, that one isn't very clear. But he's talking about the sliding conveyor belt. The thing on the inside goes in, the socket goes in, and then it rotates by 90 degrees and turns into the conveyor belt. So it kind of pops out like little egg holders. Now you've got a big hole on the side. They take off out of the front and go in the back. And then I say, I have other intel that suggests they found a craft that had crash-landed near ancient builder race ruins in Antarctica, and that they had to cannibalize their craft in order to build a settlement. Have you heard anything like that? And he said yes, he confirmed that was true. And then he said they also found an active city of 35 to 40,000 people who were still alive inside those craft after all this time, still living in there. Isn't that crazy? That was the big thing everyone went down to look at, and they wanted to meet some of these new people. We apparently are revered by them. Corey didn't confirm this was true, but said that they actually are afraid of us because of our warlike nature. They consider us to be the relatives of their great 800,000-year-old ancestors, which again, he had the number wrong, is 500,000 years old. But we are like long-distant cousins, and so they see us as their long-lost family, and they're very excited about that. Everything we have in still orbit, meaning all the classified space stations and stuff, is now hanging over Antarctica and looking to the other side to look for all these artifacts, because now it's like fully active. This wasn't known about before. It's fairly new. So, Corey then, I go to him and I say, Corey, did you hear about a 30-mile wide mothership? And he said, yes. And then he tells me that actually there was 3 of them that have been discovered. And the code names for these ships, believe it or not, are the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It's the original remnant of the fallen angels, the Luciferian people, the pre-Adamites. They're tall with elongated skulls that turned into what we now call the Illuminati, that are actually still running the planet, or they were up until this alliance thing happened. Corey confirms the 3 motherships. He confirms the sockets. Well, he didn't know about the sockets, actually. That was new to him. But he confirmed that they held multiple spaceships inside. And those spaceships could go outside the Earth's atmosphere, but they didn't have enough fuel to travel outside the solar system. So they stayed within our solar system, and then the Draco were warring with them, so they really didn't leave the Earth. But he said some of the craft that were found inside the motherships were like the Vimanas, and they looked like depictions that we see in Vedic artwork, and some of them look like what we see in Tibet, the stupas. Very interesting. So we have these ruins down there, and Corey has said, and Pete has said, that the plan is that they wanted to roll this out slowly. They start with a very conventional thing of it's just ruins and it's just humans. They didn't want us to see the giants right away because that's too much, too fast. But now I'm telling you about that part. And then eventually they reveal that they have a secret space program. They reveal the craft that they used to fly Buzz Aldrin around the backside of the moon, causing him to have a heart attack. Then they say, oh, isn't it interesting, we found ruins like this also on Mars and on the moon. They look very similar, which I showed you pictures of already. Then they're opening it up to full disclosure, and at some point we start finding out about ETs. And the reason why they're doing this is that this is the cosmic history of the Illuminati. This is what they believe to be their lineage, that they came from the exploded planet and from Mars and from Saturn. That's why it's called the Cult of Saturn, or Kronos. And they use the Saturn logo all over the place. The Rolling Stones have that album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Yes, that was the title. And it has Saturn right sitting there on the top in the image. So now I'm going to summarize this for you. It's a little after 10:30, so I didn't run that far over. Evidently, this is what Pete was saying as a summary, and this is his own words that I transcribed. Evidently, it will change our entire world forever, just knowing the information. My problem and your problem, and for the people in this audience, and the military knew that they were going to be talking to you when he said this. My problem and your problem is, for us, this is normal stuff. It's cool, but we can handle it. We don't realize what a huge impact this will have on most people. We may also end up adding things to what we hear based on our own personal beliefs, and we need to avoid that. So, to roll this thing out, I want to show you again, if you didn't see last night's talk, or the visuals on that screen weren't very good, now that we got the right screen, what we're going to see when we're finally allowed into many of these gorgeous underground cities like the one that's in Antarctica. There's many of them. Now, this is stuff that Corey found online that looks very similar to what he actually saw, so probably whoever did this art was getting some kind of telepathic download based on the reality of what's down there, and they see this psychically and then they draw it. Or maybe they have another lifetime or some kind of, maybe they're being visited. Who knows? This is an example of what it looks like inside the underground areas. They do have caves and vegetation and running water and forms of light caused by light-emitting bacteria on the surface. We see stuff like this. We see caves with water, and then they hollow out those areas and they build facilities in them, and that's where they live, these underground beings. This is another one that he said looks fairly close to what he actually saw. Again, this was kind of randomly done by an artist, telepathically most likely. Another example of an artist getting really close without actually having seen it, telepathically most likely. And this is one of the early commissions that we got. It wasn't entirely accurate. There isn't really enough stuff there. It was too much rock. But it was fairly close. It was the first attempt we made. And some of the new stuff, this is one of the brand new ones that he just commissioned. And nobody's seen it before, except for last night. This is the Anshar craft. You see the bell craft. You see the cigar-shaped craft. You see these huge pillars filled with lights because people are living in those pillars of rock. There's cities along the ground. There's domes with glowing light. And the light is like opaque so that you can't see inside. It gives them some privacy. And you also have these egg-shaped craft that I showed you before. And that's down there on the right, the egg-shaped craft. Here's an image of Corey with Kari standing in front of what it actually looks like. Now notice, interestingly, how similar this is to what those people telepathically downloaded psychically that it actually looks like. This is another illustration, and I had to really level with him. I'm like, Corey, how real is this? Because this looks freaking fantastic. It's so high-tech. It's so crazy. All these domes with all these lights on them. There must be millions of people living in there. He said, yes. This is a very close rendition of what I actually saw, and it's incredibly vast, and there are millions of people living down there already, and there's room for many more in certain areas that they've made for us, because there are going to be problems with the sun that will require us to relocate. And so it's kind of like Santa Claus, right? He's got the naughty list, and he's got the good list. And you really probably want to be on the good list, because if you're on the surface of the earth, it may not be very nice, to say the least. It could be another Atlantean kind of thing. So this is all part of this ascension idea. I believe Corey is a harbinger. It's not stuff that's only happening to him. You're not only seeing this on Cosmic Disclosure, and boy, I wish whatever was happening to Corey would happen to me. No, this is going to become our reality. We're going to get tours of these places. Maybe not where all the Anshar are, but they have other ones that will look very cool that we'll be able to go to. And so, what I'm concluding with now is a statement that we are on the threshold of potentially some of the most amazing releases of knowledge in the entire recorded history of humanity. This type of a disclosure is as significant as the advent of someone like Jesus coming on earth, if he actually did, in fact, do the things that the Bible says that he did. It's as significant as what happened to Muhammad, if you believe what's in the Quran. It's as significant as what happened to Moses, if you believe the Old Testament. It's as significant as what happened to Krishna, if you read the Mahabharata and the Drona Parva and other books like that, the Vedas. It's as significant as the Tibetan ascended masters like Padmasambhava reaching rainbow body and ascending, and 160,000 documented cases of that happening. What is going to occur, if this is true, is so vast, it's so amazing, it's almost hard to imagine. You can be a radiant light and transform the world with your love. And you can know in the greatest sense that indeed you are the light. You are the love. You are the one infinite creator now and forever. This cannot be threatened and it cannot be changed. And so it is. And now I'd like you to take a nice deep breath. Come back to your physical body. We went way into the ocean. Deep sea fishing, I call it. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. And now when you're ready, I'd like everybody to stand up. Audience participation exercise. You know, if you've been to my events, we do this. Whatever's appropriate, share the love. Give your neighbor a handshake or a hug. Don't keep it all locked up inside.
Искать хорошего мастера можно по-разному. Но лучше это делать на YouTube.
It turned out that the Antarctica topic and ancient civilization topic was extremely high, and it caused him to predict that something big was going to happen.
What do you mean big? What are they referring to?
They're referring to a possible announcement that there has been a ancient civilization found under the ice. Apparently, in 1938 and 39, the Nazis had a pretty heavy expedition down to the Antarctic. And when they were down there, they found all of these ancient ruins, which part of them I guess, cannibalized for uses and created bases there. And have ever since been continually written.
Называется покупка кабля. Можно кабель поменять. Сложно найти нормальный.
He said, we have an airplane. Well, that's what he likes to call it. There's an airplane. Really difficult to not time travel when you go through a portal. It takes a lot of work to actually not time travel, which is another thing that, multiple people say this, and you're like, where did that come from? I would have never thought of that. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is there's all these details, and they're so consistent from one person to the next person to the next person to the next person. And in the Montauk Project, they had this one wave. It was like a 20-year wave, a sine wave that would take 20 years to complete. And when somebody was in a certain point through the portal, because when you actually travel through the one that Montauk had, apparently this is what Henry Deacon was calling the ancient stargates. There's ancient stargates and modern stargates. Modern stargate, you just pop, and you don't even feel anything. It might be like, like Bob Dean said that it was like a sudden electrical shock in your body, but it's almost imperceptible. And he told me one time he reached down for his briefcase right as it was happening, and then didn't even realize until he stood up that he'd actually been through it. He was disappointed because he wanted to feel something, but there's nothing to feel. So that's a modern portal. Modern portal, you don't feel anything. Ancient portals, the ones that were built a long time ago, can be very, very rough. This is, from what guys like Henry Deacon and other insiders reported to me, you're going down a tunnel of light, similar to what you see in various movies. There is a visible tunnel, and it's shifting and turning like you see in the movie Contact. And the psychological impact of this can be very, very extreme. There are a certain number of people, good number of people, if you send them through an ancient stargate, they will never recover. Their mental health will never recover from going through that portal. They're done. They come out the other side and they're never the same. They're broken. Because apparently you need to have reached a certain level of spiritual maturity to be able to actually handle this experience. It's not just something that happens. You don't just get a nice ride. So when people went through the Montauk Project from the scene from the UFO, and they went through that portal, it was one of these bumping and jostling rides through a wormhole. And then interestingly enough, as you're going through that wormhole, they can tell where in time you are by how far this 20-year sine wave has gone. Okay? So they know if you were to suddenly pull out of that wormhole at a certain point, they know exactly where in time you're going to land. So one of the things, and again, this is something I heard from more than one insider, okay? More than one insider said the same thing, which is that they got to December 20, right around December 2012. They didn't have it down to the day, but they could calibrate it pretty closely. And at that point, these guys would hit some kind of wall, like they're shooting through this wormhole tunnel, turning and all this crazy stuff is happening to you, and it's color and it's light, and then you hit this wall, and it's as if your entire body dematerializes into light particles. That's what it feels like. And all of a sudden, you go into this total psychedelic cosmic consciousness. As if what you hear about when people say they went to the light in a near-death experience. I saw God. I saw the light. I saw the Creator. Basically, these guys are reporting the same thing, and they don't even really know, words are like blunt stone knives when you need a diamond-tipped scalpel. Words don't give you the tools to explain what this thing is. They would say things like that they felt as if they were as big as the galaxy and as small as a subatomic particle at the same time. They are everywhere and they are nowhere. And it is absolute bliss and ecstasy beyond your wildest imagination. And they would have no time. This thing could go on for what seems like an eternity. You don't have any concept of how long it's been. It's like it's always there, and you just tap into foreverness. So imagine what that's like. You're trying to send people into the future. They hit this wall at the end of 2012. They dematerialize into particles. And then eventually, after they've had what could be, who knows how long of an experience in this pure consciousness, then they keep on going. And then they go into some kind of future reality, but those realities now appear to be a construct from their own psychology. This is one of the things that I heard from more than one insider. Their own mind creates what they see after this wall. And so it's variable. There's no fixed points anymore. You could send two different guys to apparently the same place, and they're going to have a totally divergent experience. And so one of the weird things that happened was some of these guys that went through this thing, after they got through the full out, they'd see this weird mechanical horse. And that's what's on the cover of the Montauk Project book. There was this weird room that they would go to, and there's this kind of black, funny-looking metallic horse rearing up on its front legs. And I guess because the theory was that because different people saw this, that it created some kind of thought form construct that they were able to interact with. And then you could send other people to it, but different people would see it differently. The horse might be a different color, or it might not even be there. So it's a very strange series of things. So you have to understand, I'm looking at the end of the Mayan calendar. I'm looking at the fact that the Mayan calendar cycles are charting accurate planetary motions. This includes the 260-day Tzolk'in, which charts all the inner planets' rotations. They're all common denominators of 260 days, multiplied by a certain number. Exactly, like down to the decimal point. Same thing with the Katun, which is a 20-year cycle, roughly speaking. Same thing with the Baktun, which is 144,000 days, or roughly about 400 years. The Mayan calendar is charting planetary motions. And how the heck did these so-called primitive people, first of all, how the hell did they build pyramids? Why do you get pyramids on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean in seemingly geographically isolated cultures, and yet they're not? Because even the base perimeter of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan is exactly the same as the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Oh yeah, that's right. The only difference between the two pyramid cultures is that one of them is straight and one of them goes in steps. Big freaking deal. Let's not argue over little niceties like that. Let's look at the fact that everybody in the world is taking gigantic blocks of stone and tossing them around like they were Lego blocks. And there's nobody walking around in daddy diapers and doing this stuff in today's world, in the jungle. Sorry. I had to let that joke grenade kind of simmer.
So this is the Colour Zone Explorer jacket from the Autumn-Winter 18-19 collection from CP Company.
Daddy diapers, oh yeah, right. timing is everything in comedy. So, we have the proof right in front of us. There's some big, big things going on. There's some big mysteries that have not been resolved. And this is frustrating. And then I'm seeing, okay, well, the Mayans clearly had some kind of advanced technology. They clearly could build these amazing structures, and they left behind a calculator. And we know it's a celestial calculator, because all the cycles of the Mayan calendar calibrate to the planetary orbits. And they even calibrate to the rotation inside the Earth's core, which is slightly different than the rest of the outside of the Earth, which takes about 400 years to revolve on its axis, and that's scientifically proven. So the Khatun of 144 days, or the Baktun rather, the Baktun is cataloging that movement. All this interesting stuff about the Mayan calendar, and it supposedly ends on December 21st, 2012. And you know how many times people in our community have tried to manipulate the date. Oh, well, the Gregorian calendar, you have to actually adjust by 4 years, which means it's right now. Ah! Buy my book, buy my DVD. How many times have we heard the Gregorian calendar argument for the friggin' Mayan calendar? How many different ways could they have screwed it up? Whatever suits the guy that's selling the book. I looked into all the data of the cycles, and I concluded that the cycles were actually right, and it was 2012. And I did a lot of research on this. Then you also have these ages of the zodiac. They're 2,160 years long, and the movement from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius lands right smack dab on the end of December 2012 there. So I'm out there hearing from people talking from Looking Glass, and Looking Glass has 2 timelines, as I said. They merge at the end of 2012. And they're like flickering so fast you can't see anything anymore. I'm hearing about people in 1981 through 83 flying through these portals of the Montauk Project, hitting a wall, turning into light, having a God consciousness experience, and then nothing after that time is solid. And I say, you know what? These experiences sound an awful lot like the idea of ascension. Something big happens to us. There's some spiritual transformation that we're going to go through. There's some major, major evolutionary quantum leap in what it means to be human. So 2012 comes, and I'm looking at this, and I'd also been getting dreams and messages from extraterrestrials, what I thought to be, I've had incredible dreams, starting when I read this Law of One material, in which, for example, I see a UFO, and I'm so excited. I had the rock star effect, the wrong rock star effect, right? Oh my God, you know, I'm so excited. And it goes, boom, this thing comes out, it's spinning really fast, comes down, lands on the ground, and it's this telephone, but it's got sharp edges on it, and it digs into the ground. And it's an old-fashioned rotary dial phone with the little squiggly cord, and it starts ringing. And then my hand is shaking, and then I wake up. I had a dream where an extraterrestrial being shows up in front of me, and this wind tornado comes from behind him, and all these books are flying at my face. And it's all the 300 plus books that I'd read since I got into this stuff back in 1993, when I really started to binge on books. Paranormal. Every book that goes by me, it's like the entire contents are downloading into my brain, and I'm able to see the whole thing like a big matrix. And it was about 300 books. And I was aware of each one of them. I had another dream where there was a being, like a ghost, and he was trying to do the electromagnetic voice phenomenon, or EVP, where I hit record, and then he talks, and then after it's over, you play the tape back, and you hear this whispering voice. It's very creepy. You've heard about EVP. I mean, that was a big thing in the 90s when Art Bell was really at his peak. And there's some really strange stuff with EVP. Some of it definitely seems to be real. It was done under controlled conditions. You go to a haunted house, you hit record, nobody's hearing anything, you go back and listen to the tape, and there's this creepy whispering voice. So in the dream, this being is trying to do EVP through me, and then he concludes, well, that can't work, but David, here's an idea. You can hear me. So why don't I tell you what I want to say, and then you dictate it into the tape recorder? So after a while of having enough of these dreams, and it's like, well, all these very powerful dreams are saying the beings want to connect with me. They want to talk to me. I had a final experience, which was my colleague, Joe Mason, not a Freemason. It just so happens his last name was Mason, interestingly enough. He had a website at the time, I think he still does, called greatdreams.com. And he was a frequent participant on Hoagland's message board, as was I. And he starts talking to me about all this synchronicity stuff, and I'm seeing all these numbers on clocks. Here's another guy who seems to go way beyond what I knew about the numbers. He's equating them with crop circle formations. He's equating crop circle formations with prophecies, with extraterrestrial beings. He's got an incredible encyclopedic knowledge of mythology, ancient civilizations, all these interesting pieces that he's tying together. And I finally called him on the phone, and I'm falling asleep, and I'm very, very, very tired. I can barely stay awake. But he's giving me so much amazing information that I'm just trying to write it down. And I'm barely conscious. But I'm listening to his voice. In this call, he talks to me about something called the dream voice. And he said that the dream voice was a phenomenon that you hear in the morning when you can remember your dreams. Now, I remember my dreams every morning. That's a common thing for me. I get detailed, amazing dreams every day. So he says, when you can still remember your dreams, and you keep yourself in a very deep state of meditation, listen to the background noise. If it sounds like there's a commercial running on the TV in the other room, listen over here. You'll notice it's in a direction. It might be over to your left. It might be behind you. It might be off to the side on the right, kind of halfway between east and north. It might have a vertical height. Find out where that source of talking is coming from, pay attention to it, and try to listen to it. But then he also said, this was consistent with viewing, don't analyze anything. If it sounds totally nonsensical, if it sounds like a complete word salad of gobbledygook, that's terrific. Write it down exactly the way you hear it. And he's telling me this, and I'm getting so excited. He's talking about crop circles and 1111 and all this crazy stuff. I finally pass out after we've been on the phone for, 4 hours. I had all these notes in my notebook. I wake up the next morning, couldn't remember my dream, which was very upsetting, and I'm very, very tired. And I'm hearing him talking. It's just like it was last night. He's still talking. I said, I know. I said, that son of a bitch. How did he do this? So I'm writing down all of his stuff. And it turns out that it's this voice that speaks in very weird cryptic language. And it started to predict the future so accurately, so many times, that I would get behind almost by a month in my transcriptions. I'd have a stack of cassettes on my desk. And I would pop one into the tape recorder, I'd hit play, I'd start transcribing. It could have been a month ago. And it's describing what was happening to me right before I sat down. And it does this every single time I start transcribing. And this goes on through the end of 1996 is when it started, November 10th, 96, through 97, 98, 99, 2000. And I'm having amazing stuff happen in the beginning. The first couple of years I was doing all the time. And this voice so accurately predicted the future that it totally had me throw away my concept of time. Now, they never said in this that it was going to happen in 2012, but I was very much getting a message about ascension. I was very much getting whatever this voice was telling me something really fantastic is going to be happening to the planet. And a lot of times, although I didn't understand it at the time, and it's in my notes, and I'm going to bring these out, and I'm working on my new book now, Awakening of the Dream. Really going to be, actually right after this conference, I'm going to write most of it. I'm going to show you guys the notes of the original, and I'll probably even bring out audio transcripts because I'm dictating this. Seeing beings that look Nordic in white robes who appear to be telling me this stuff as it's happening. But it ended up, once I started to put this stuff on the internet, that the shame factor, the number of haters, and then I even put some of the audio out. Now you gotta understand, if you do barely conscious, you don't listen to what you're saying, it's going to sound like a robotic monotone. It's very slow. Oh my God, that's the devil. How the hell did you get Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John written, guys? I mean, come on. People have been able to do this. Sacred, inspired texts have been going on all throughout history, and they have amazing prophecies in them. I had no idea when all this started where it was going to go. But it was only first with Emery Smith popping up in 2009. Here's a guy claiming that he's autopsied 3,000 different types of biological specimens during his time in an underground military base. 3,000 different types, including over 1,000 intact bodies that are all different, but basically more or less human-like. He calls it the 5-star pattern. That was in 2009, and he's given me all this great stuff. So Emery only came forward after grievous threats against his life multiple times, and I said, if you don't come forward, they're going to get you. By that point, everybody had heard from Corey Good already. Corey had written me as far back, I think, as 2008 or something, 2009, but he didn't actually step forward and tell me what he really knew until 2014. And he wrote 3 people when he started. He wrote Benjamin Fulford, Kerry Cassidy, and myself. Fulford passed. Kerry actually got to him first. I just kind of held back and said, let's see what happens with this. You know, when Corey started talking to me, here's a guy who's got all of the different pieces from every insider. There literally were things from every other person I'd met that he said, oh yeah, I know about Looking Glass. Oh yeah, the portal and the shimmery thing on the edge. Oh yeah, yeah. So I was scrambling like crazy to write everything down that he said. We were talking almost on a daily basis, and all I'm doing is asking questions and he's answering them. And from probably November, and I recorded everything, so I still have all the recordings of those original conversations. And there's probably some stuff in there that we don't want people hearing, so we're not just going to dump them on the internet. We were gossiping about certain individuals, and those things would need to be cut. For reasons that you might know. So anyway, I have all the tapes. I have all the original recordings. They're actually MP3s. And they're in multiple locations, so nobody can just grab my computer and run away with them. I took so many notes that it ended up becoming this massive 120-page document, and that was what led to disclosure. I said, look at all the material we've got. Look at how amazing this stuff is. And when we brought Corey in, originally we thought, yeah, you know, he might be good for 6 episodes. We might get a 10-episode or a 30, maybe if we're lucky, we'll get a 13-episode miniseries. Corey and I sat down in the first week alone, and we knocked I do. It's basically like we just had to stop the camera every half an hour and then pick it up again, keep going. And lo and behold, the viewership numbers, the subscriber numbers for which we were working with, and we're in the, I forget what it was, 30s, 40s, and 50s. It was a lot lower. Doubled the company, basically. And it was a very complex, weird story. It takes a lot of time and energy to understand this. So naturally, this is not something you can hit with a sneaker. This is something you got to really dedicate yourself to understand. It's hyper complex. Corey knows all this stuff that other insiders told me, none of whom had come forward on their own. Later on, of course, we get Emery, and William Tompkins ends up saying the same stuff Corey's saying. This is normal. If you find a real guy, they're all going to say the same kind of stuff. So without further ado, is there a microphone somewhere for him? Do we have a microphone for Corey? Because I don't see it. I don't want to blow his bum in here. Oh, we got to get set up for it.
We're going to do
Intermission.
it's a mission.
Come on, I got all this momentum. Yeah, bring him up.
Give it up for David Wilcock. What's up?
Did you know when we started all this that you'd be in front of a crowd like this today?
Absolutely not. You remember how introverted I was
Yeah.
when we first started shooting Cosmic? I would have to look at you, so as soon as I look at the camera, it's like black and white, sucking me in, and I just...
It's true. You and I were just talking earlier today about the original film that I shot of you that was like your pilot episode. And I still have that. Nobody's ever seen it. We just have to clean up the audio, but I've already done like 80% of the work. So we probably are going to release our original interview before anybody knew who he was. And
It was shot in your living room.
yeah, that's right. But we actually had some nice lighting, and it actually looks pretty good. So, what was it like in those early days, Corey, when you had been telling me all the stuff that already happened to you in the past, and we'd been talking for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden, I mean, you were basically out of the game, right? Let's just talk about that for a minute. Explain to people, when you and I first started talking for the first 3 months, what were the most recent things that had happened to you that were Secret Space Program related?
I was pulled back in the 90s, for some groups wanted me to participate in providing them information, but at that time I was no longer a viable asset. I wasn't getting the shots that they needed.
Well, and one of the things I thought was really interesting that relates to what I was just talking about is you had said that there were ways in which you had been trained to actually detect these portals psychically. So could you describe a little more about what this work was? What were they trying to get you to do?
Yes, they would use intuitive empaths. They would use 3 of them to triangulate portals that would open, the natural portal system. And I've described many times about how Earth and our local star are connected by electromagnetic filament. And as the Earth spins, that electromagnetic filament is going up and down the equator and going...
I'm just going to freaking do it myself.
Going below the surface of the Earth.
Yeah.
These points are connected to nodes, and these nodes can be a magnetic connection that it makes high in the atmosphere, even in space. It can be on the surface of the Earth, or it can be underneath, even under the ocean.
Так, назваться подать. Test dioxide. Так, феррит даст. Даст у нас сколько? Наверное, у нас там как-нибудь. все это уже.
Three of us triangulate where these were going to open next, so they could position themselves to take advantage of the portals.
So some of the technology that they have, first of all, these would be like anti-gravity craft that they're flying, I assume, right?
Yes.
But they apparently, when a portal opened up, they might not be able to normally detect it with any electromagnetic signature, but psychics could.
Yes, and they had technological ways of detecting where we were. A lot of these, in the 90s, these groups even picked me up. They were picking me up in triangular craft. Type people that had access to this technology,
Right.
but they didn't have access to all of the technology until the portals. They were flying they couldn't call in a location for
So somehow these guys were doing unauthorized trips, and if they could find one of these naturally occurring portals, they had technology that could then harness it and use it to travel somewhere else.
Correct.
Did you ever have an idea of what they were going to do when they got to the other side? Or what was the reason why they needed to have an unauthorized trip?
You sometimes will be able to extrapolate what was going on by what equipment was around, how people were dressed that were about to go through the portal, but you didn't have a need to know that type of information.
So you didn't stay on the ship once they found the portal. You just found the portal and they go off on their own.
Right, and a lot of times these people wouldn't even use a ship. They would bring us to a place, and we would determine where the portal was going to open. Then they would send a local team through on foot sometimes. They would arrive, like we would give them a longitude, a latitude, and an altitude. The team would arrive with a remote set of equipment that would open up the portal. These would be on tripods set up around usually 4, I believe. And in the middle is where of the 4 tripods. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I heard from other insiders. The only difference is that they apparently got it working on 3 instead of 4. But
Yeah,
everything
I
else is
can't
the same.
remember if it was that they had to have 4 3 spatial connections and then a 4th one.
Even now, I'm learning brand new stuff, guys. We've never had this conversation before, believe it or not. Give a big round of applause.
Hi, I'm Esther. I'm here to introduce you to Cake. Cake is a...
So we would give them this information, and they would have teams that were in craft that would fly to this location, and sometimes they would enter these portals on foot. Sometimes they would drive in with regular vehicles, and like I said, sometimes they would fly, depending on the portals up or atmosphere, they would fly through, and then they would take it somewhere else.
And how do you feel about what the other insiders had said, that you see where you're going and there's like a shimmery heat signature around the edge?
That's exactly how I described it.
Right. this kind of information seems like it's sci-fi, seems like it belongs in a movie. And somebody who's just casually watching this online and is like, these guys are crazy, Corey Good is crazy. You have to understand the density of different people that have said the same thing, the density of the data, and how consistent this is. We just found another one right now. Anytime I start talking about something new and I open up a new line, I invariably hear him say things that other people already told me that I didn't put online. So this is just another example. So that was the last time that you had had anything happen. Now, another thing I remember in the early days when I was talking to you, and if we ever do go through the trouble of digging up all those original recordings and publishing them, there was a certain extraterrestrial contact that you had had, and you were very, very evasive. Like, you told me basically everything I wanted to know, except that you said some kind of ET group had contacted you, and it was a very personal thing, and you didn't want to let me know.
Come on, dude. What would you do if 8-foot-tall blue birds started talking? You have to sit back and process a little while.
I mean, I'm absolutely shameless. I'll make jokes about my member, so I probably would just tell everybody. But you and I have very different personalities, so I totally get it.
I'm an introvert.
Yes. I'm definitely not. You get it all here. This is the backstage pass. Okay? There's the cool cuts. Unlike Faster Pussycat, there's no big junk back there. And there's nobody vomiting over in the singing pool. So why did you not want to talk to me about these beings? I mean, apart from obviously the embarrassment factor, you told me there were some other things that were going on. It was not just like a random set of messages. It was very personal.
Right. Well, during the time, I was told not to share the information. But as I've told you in the past, I had been involved in an interrogation program and seen many different ETs at their best and at their worst, but I'd never seen an 8-foot-tall bird. I hadn't heard anyone talk about it. So I was a bit concerned, to be honest, when it first happened, and I was really trying to figure out what was going on, because it was pretty much like a religious experience. Six sensitive beings, their sensitive consciousness comes in proximity of theirs and connection.
So walk us through, in these original experiences, how did this happen? Were you told to go out into a field and there's this brilliant light and the craft comes down? What was it like? How did they reach you?
Through my dreams in the beginning. And I remember the first time I was having a dream, and for some reason there was a commercial that was popular during the time, or that it came out during the time. It was a female soldier coming home from deployment, and this huge, I don't even know what kind of dog it was, breeding her, and jumping around all over her, breeding her. And I don't know why I was seeing that, and then all of a sudden the dog kind of morphed and turned around, and it was this blue bird being right in front of me, and raised its hand up.
This is not a television commercial now. This is your dream.
Yeah, this is I was dreaming about for some reason this television commercial. I don't normally dream about commercials. So this commercial, played out, and the giant dog turned around and morphed into T-Rex. And T-Rex just sat there kind of moving his mouth like this and doing his hand. And I go, I'm not hearing anything, but I feel it's communicating with me. And that was it. I woke up, and I was like, whoa. That was really, I knew it was my dream, but I didn't know some of this screwing around in my head. I'd been involved with technologies, in the past, like Voice of God and others, so I knew what was out there. So it was, then over consecutive nights, it started visiting me again, and I started being able to understand the information that was coming through. It was coming through. It was allowing me, my ego, to see it, but it was communicating with
this is another thing that we've never talked about before. After a while, you got to try to find how can we do something new. Because you guys have seen everything, right? I mean, like,
Should we have Emery come on out?
very soon, yes.
Back.
Yes. I'm the MC, bro.
Okay.
I want to get to this first. I have an agenda. It's all good. So, I wanted to kind of set the record straight on this because I had started reading this book, The Law of One. It's actually a series of 5 books in 1996. And then that paved the way for this contact that I had with what Joe Mason called the Dream Voice, where I have these stacks of tapes on my desk. They're predicting the future very, very accurately. And it all seemed like I was in touch with the source from the Law of One material, which identifies itself as Ra. And when they were asked about the relationship between Ra and a bird, they said, yes, the bird is the best way to envision what we look like. This is in the Law of One material. The Law of One material also says anytime they're going to contact someone, they begin in dreams to reduce fear. So you just, again, validate the So we do all this talking for X number of months, and then you had had these contact experiences and didn't want to tell me about it. And you had also said that there was a lot of really personal information in this stuff that was very deep. And I'm not going to ask you to give that stuff because I know personal by definition means not to be shared in front of 500 of your best friends here and 2 million over on YouTube, right? Once it's stolen. So the point is, we both kind of began in a very similar way. Telepathic contact, dream contact, and I already had this whole body of it, Law of One information. I had all the science of it, and I've put it together in, like what Teresa was saying in my introduction, the source field investigations. That whole book, over 1,000 academic references, is just validating what's in the Law of One, really. And I say that in the acknowledgments at the end. But I didn't even need to mention the Law of One all the way through, because their model of science is so much more advanced than ours that if you just take the clues they give you and put it together, you have an entirely new view of science and reality. And it includes this whole secret space program thing, and it includes the idea of ascension. Now I'm kind of in flames here because 2012 had come and gone. Nothing seems to have happened. But you remember, Corey, that there was a weird event in December 2014, right around the time that you and I started talking. And I heard about this from other insiders. And what I heard was that they tried to shoot something in our, just outside Earth, with a big, big particle beam weapon. There was just some argument over, had it come out of Australia, or where was it shot? But you remember this part, right? So why don't you tell everybody what happened there?
Yeah, I was told that either the targeting system for this weapon was in Australia, and the weapon itself was in South Africa, or vice versa. That it was a 2-part weapon. It was a targeting system in the actual weapons platform. That it had targeted a sphere that they had detected outside the atmosphere, and that they were going to destroy it because they had been sending ships out to where they knew they were, trying to hail whoever was supposedly in these spheres. They got no response.
And when you say sphere, how big are we talking? Is it like a golf ball?
Yeah. No, the smallest ones were the size of the moon. The largest ones were the size of Jupiter.
And they were somehow cloaked. It's not like these are all visible to people on Earth.
Right. They were out of phase more than anything. And so they trained their weapon on one of these spheres and fired. And the sphere, using an Aikido principle, just redirected the energy right back down. And there were, I'm told, reptilians present, there were non-terrestrials present, and what we're calling deep state or cabal operatives present at this location that's destroyed.
Right. And again, when you start hearing about reptilians and things like this is another example of something that I've been hearing about, that there are certain types of extraterrestrials that have reptilian physiology. The descriptions between insiders who've never spoken to each other, and I never put the stuff online, was remarkably consistent. I mean, incredible my conclusion is that these guys are telling me the truth. So they not only redirected the beam back to the Earth. Oh, here's the same reply that my wife was so upset about the other day. Now
Roger almost ate it.
Now we're going to be doing this for the next hour. Not only did this beam redirect back to the base that shot it, but a far more dramatic and massive effect also took place. So could you remind everybody, in case they hadn't heard all the details of the story, what that was?
Yes, at that point, a barrier in the solar system that prevented non-terrestrials from a wide range of densities from being able to come or go from our solar system.
So essentially, we ended up under some kind of quarantine. And this event again took place after you and I started talking, right within 2014. You and I started talking end of October of 2014. Right as we're really into the thick of it, that's when this thing happened. There's this barrier that goes up around our solar system and the Earth. Now, it was at the very end of February that someone contacts you and says that they want you back into the you come from. So could you describe for us how that initial contact took place and what was the request that was given? Because you hadn't been contacted since the 90s for this proposal.
I started doing science. I had met him. He came to my house before I came out with all this information when I was going through all of the depression after I had the needle stuck in my eye, the detachment of my eye. He showed up at his house told me that I was going to speak on their behalf and that I was going to be contacted by people from my life, I should say. And I was not going to sign it.
So for translating, for those who haven't heard this narrative before, when he talks about 20 and back, he's describing a very strange experience where you're taken into space, you work for 20 years, because they have time travel, they revert you back to the time you left, whatever that date was, and then they put you through this machine, takes about a week, and they age regress you back to the age you were when you left. And then they splice you in and wipe out the memory of those 20 years, and it actually works pretty well.
And where that technology came from, are the coordinates that other planets, when they're trying to liberate them, they will come in and use this 20-back type of program. They'll bring it in, and it allows them to use assets on that planet to fight for its sovereignty without breaking cosmic law. They're pulling these people out of another planet. They're serving in these programs, and then they're removing all memory of it and putting them back in time.
And you had said in your 20 and backs that you might have people who had come from the era of like the 1950s working besides people who came from the 1980s.
Right. They wouldn't tell you that, but you know, people from different eras, they have very obvious giveaways. How they move, how they just their demeanor, and how, you know, obviously how they talk. And I saw this quite a bit. And later on, after I'd been in the program for a while, I asked, are these people coming? I asked one of the scientists, are these people coming from different time periods? And they said, on rare occasion, that these people.
So let's now go to the moment that you actually get brought up there again, and you're at what you call the LOC, or Lunar Operations Command, in the conference room, maybe not a whole lot different than this.
Not a whole lot different at all.
And you're up there on stage, Gonzalez has brought you in, and everybody in the audience starts heckling you, thinking that you're something.
Just these people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this dude looks pretty shady right here. I don't know why. speed your back.
You do, yeah. But, yes, everyone straightened up and leaned back, and their eyes got really big. And I looked behind me, and Tyr was there, and the being I'd never seen before, these golden triangle-headed beings.
Right. The wavy.
Very strange looking.
So at this point, from what you've described, and most of the people know the story, but there's a reason why I'm bringing this up again. The beings that had already been talking to you, you said in your dreams, they'd approached you before, you had a dog turn into this being in one of your dreams, and they had prepared you that you were going to have this meeting. For some reason, which is exactly what's like in the Law of One, by universal law, they could not talk to these people directly. They had to use you as an instrument, as an interface, telepathically.
I mean, they told me, repeat what we tell you exactly. So,
which is exactly what happened in the dream I had with the being whispering to me, saying, I can't do it electromagnetically, I'm going to talk to you, and then you put it onto the tape.
Yeah, it just seemed like a waste of time. I'm standing there, they're standing there, and they could have easily communicated with these people.
Now, how many of these spheres were in our solar system, roughly, at the time that this meeting was taking place?
There were many, hundreds. They had been seeing them pouring in through the sun, portaling in through the sun, and coming in from outside the solar system. They've been seeing them come in since, I think, around 2011. And at the end of 2012, that failure date, supposedly, they came in mass. And I think that's the big thing that occurred in 2012. It just didn't happen.
But also, everybody in the space program, even back when you were in it, and all my insiders also were telling me this, everybody's expecting at some point the sun is going to give off an enormously bright flash of light, much brighter than usual. Like a full halo from mass ejection.
Yes, and also, more so during that time period, those people were thinking that it was the Reacher. But they couldn't understand why the reptilians were so nervous. So, the military-industrial complex was thinking that it was the return of their gods. And they were savage.
But, and remember now, in case you guys haven't heard this already, way back in the late 1990s, 98, 99, there was this guy with a website, cyberspaceorbit.com. His name was Ken Stedman, and he was reporting multiple times of the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory Satellite, or SOHO, seeing these gigantic planet-sized objects coming in that he called sun cruisers. A lot of people got confused back then because there would be a line across the dot, but that's because it was so bright that it blew out the CCD sensors of the camera and created a pixel fold that made that line horizontally. So what you're actually seeing is a big planet-sized dot, literally the size of the other planets. And they would come in through the sun. And again, it's sad that we didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have anywhere near the number of people watching this, because I was into it back in the late 90s, and this stuff was happening all the time. And many times when these things would come in, NASA would all of a sudden, oops, SOHO has had a malfunction. And it doesn't work, and oops, the camera shut off. Oops, now we're going to have to reload it. But there were enough times that they caught the thing on film. But I only saw maybe, 10, 20 examples of these planet-sized objects. What we're saying is that there were hundreds of them in our solar system.
They couldn't figure out what was going on at first. They were pouring in, the Earth is in a very small area of the sun. It's traveling around. These spheres were, they were positioning themselves from the sun out. The different size spheres were positioning themselves from the they were some sort of resonance waves coming from the sun and from the outer cosmos. And as they were coming in, these spheres were vibrating and baffling the energy that was coming in, because they were protecting us and the planet. We weren't.
So a lot of these insiders that I had, their information was really no more recent than the 80s, because they've been out for a while, and they come to me like 20 years. And back then, they were thinking that the sun was going to do his flash at the end of 2012. And they were seeing things like these two timelines that fluttered together into one at the end of 2012. They have the guys going through Montauk and portals, and then they hit this wall and they turn into particles. And then after 2012, they have this God consciousness experience. And so I'm looking at this and I'm saying it sure looks like the solar flash is going to happen at the Mayan calendar end date. So by this point, it's come and gone. 2012's come and gone. And did these guys in the audience want to ask these beings through you, what the heck happened in 2012? Why didn't the sun do its flash?
They not asked a number of questions. Some of them were about actually the law. Some of them were asking about soul travel when we die. And some of them were asking highly technical questions. I did not even know what I was saying back when I was responding. So, I mean, I had no base of reference to be able to tell you what I was talking about. I had no idea.
But there was a point made, and this is already in the episode, so I'm not leading it, okay, for those keyboard warriors again who are going to try to think that they're amazing because they found a mistake or something. But one of the things that you did say, and I just want to get to this because we're going to bring Emery up in just a minute here, is that they were asked about what were the spheres really doing. And so just to really cut to the chase, it appeared, right, that the spheres were holding off this solar flash.
Right, they were attenuating the energy. The way I describe it compared to the way they describe it to me, there's a major gulf. I've described the electromagnetic filaments that occur. So they break into
Portals.
For portals. So I'm sorry, I got lost in
This is what happens when you're 113 years old.
Yes.
Give him a big round of applause there. What was the bottom line of the spheres that they were holding off the solar flash until we were all ready as planned?
Right, there was some sort of electromagnetic attenuation that was occurring that was preventing our star from completing an electromagnetic arc connection to the other stars as this energy was passing through them, through the cosmic web. It prevented that from occurring.
All right, so another thing that's very bizarre here is that some kind of cosmic Aikido principle, as you said, they shot this sphere, the sphere shoots back, blows up into space, which might have been Pine Gap in Australia or something like that. There's a few areas in Australia, way out in the desert. And then this barrier goes up around the solar system, and ETs can't come in, and ETs can't go out. Now, if the barrier is there, and the solar flash is going to happen, and there's some really nasty reptilian ETs in our solar system, what's going to happen to them if they can't get out of here when the solar flash comes on?
They're going to be caught up in the effects of these energies. I have to say that the synchronicity, you talking about people trying to travel past 2012 in these portals and then running into this cosmic consciousness. I don't know if you heard last night, I was talking with Roger. The Anshar recently told me they were describing the energies that are coming through our solar system right now and how they're going to be powerful. They refer to them as the cosmic consciousness. They said it was going to work against the galaxy. Basically, Christ consciousness that was coming back to cause a healing within us and within the planet to where we all judge ourselves.
Right, and I'm going to go through this tomorrow in the workshop. The prophecies of ascension, the science of ascension, interplanetary climate change, all the signs that our solar system is like a capacitor building up energy. And similar to electromagnetics, if you build up enough charge, you're going to get a static shock, right? If you scuff your feet on a wool carpet and then you touch the door and it's because you've built up all this energy charge in your body and it has to discharge. So it appears, right, like the sun is going to have some kind of discharge like this. So the effect on these negative ETs, apparently they have built a major headquarters in our solar system, correct? could have.
Right. And the reptilians even, I was watching a meeting where they were willing to hand over all of their underlings to betray everyone to be given safe passage outside the solar system because they did not want to be here in this judgment.
And
Because
then
they're going to be forced to judge themselves as well.
right. So this is very exciting because it lends so much more depth and credibility to the ancient prophecies that we encountered that I'm going to be going through tomorrow. There's so much there that crosses over with Rory now being like the modern Enoch. If you look at the book of Enoch, Enoch was brought up into the heavens and became a messenger where the bad ETs on earth were asking to be saved by the good ETs called the Elohim. And they were rejected. And this is what led to the Atlantean flood. And because the people here on Earth we call the Cabal or the Illuminati are the descendants of those ETs that lost out on that deal and had the flood, they think that our God, the Abrahamic God in the Western traditions, is evil because he voted for the flood, voted to kill these people off. So there's this ongoing 12,000-year-old grudge that they have that still hasn't been properly resolved. So to really kind of hit the nail on the head here, obviously, when I started to talk to you and all the other insiders who was real, had things that were precisely described in the Law of One material, including materials of technology, bases on the moon, all this kind of stuff. Did anybody in this crowd ask about the Law of One?
Yes. Yes, they asked if Tier Air was the Ra from the Law of One.
And what was his answer?
I am Ra Tier Air.
And the beginning of every statement they make in the Law of One starts with the phrase, I am Ra. And it was pronounced Ra by her, Carla, who was speaking. Ra was Ra, right? Okay, good. So what's so weird is that right away I knew, okay, Amy, Horus, right, Egyptian, this is the Law of One contact coming back. I know, but then in the kitchen, remember this part, in the kitchen I asked, is Corey in contact with Ra of the Law of One? And I heard 3 words, go outside now. That's all I got. And I asked again, I hear, go outside now. Like this. This is what it sounded like. 3 times I asked the same thing. And they did not give me anything else. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go outside. I walk outside and there is this gigantic rainbow over the valley of Los Angeles. And so this is the funny thing is they don't really answer the question. But yet I knew the rainbow was the answer. And in the Law of One they explain how they have to preserve free will. They can't really tell you, but they can make a strong hint. So again, it's like that answer was like a strong hint. So now I have, and you guys know this, of course, the Law of One is exceedingly complex. 106 question and answer sessions where he jumps all around. It's very, very complex material. To really dig deep into the meat of this thing, you actually have to read the Law of One, understand the philosophy, that they're talking about ascension, they're talking about these events coming to play. And the beings that you start to talk to seem to have this encyclopedic knowledge of the Law of One. It's crazy that we had the book there and flipping through it. So now, guys, without further ado, I want to bring Emery Smith up to the stage. Let's get him out here. Put this man to work.
That's his parachute on.
Vote for me in 2020.
Watch, I got my essential oils with me. Who was there last night with me? Raise your hands. Can't make that up, can you? Good stuff.
Yeah, I heard that you guys had some very interesting things taking place last night.
That's the norm. At my house, we see these things are.
Now, it took a long time to get you to come forward. And it's very interesting for me because everybody kind of heard your story. There's a lot of love in this room right now. Oh, yeah.
I gave everyone the high five except, my 2 colleagues.
Now, we're unfolding a cosmic narrative here. And like Corey, have had in-person contact with extraterrestrials. Now, we kind of overlooked this when we were doing Cosmic Disclosure, but I've also had contact the whole time. It's just that for me, it was always telepathic. But the one thing that I can tell you guys is that every time that I would receive the contacts where I wouldn't know what the heck I was saying, the voices just come, I'm just letting myself talk, but I don't listen to it. You have to be very deep in meditation so that you're forgetting each word as it comes out. Because it's so slow, your mind is going so fast that the time between words is so long, you can't even tell what the sentence is. And both of you guys have reported contact with ETs and telepathic stuff. And one of the things that would always happen to me is I get this incredible bliss sensation. In fact, I had to invoke the bliss sensation first, and then be in this really, really deep trance before the words would come in, where later on I transcribe them and they would predict the future just like somebody's reading pages out of a book.
You have to have that frequency before you make contact. That's why you do that. You know, then you're at that level of no ego and you're ready to make contact like we did last night. You have to escape from this realm here and drop all your shields down and say, I'm just the same as you, and you, and we're ready to make contact. And that's what happened. That's what you're explaining right now. Is getting on that frequency level to accept that.
And Corey, you reported that these beings, like when Tyrier was first talking to you, that you would have a very powerful bliss state. Could you describe that for us just with a little more verbal decoration? Since sometimes he literally answers with one word.
Yep. Yep.
Yep, nope, and maybe.
So, the question is, what's it like?
Can you feel your underpants?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with that.
Okay. So, some of these beings, we learned very quickly during interrogations, a lot of these beings, before they communicate or come in contact with a human being, they manipulate your state of mind. So, a very gross-looking ET can project an image of an angel of light coming into the room with you and deceive you and interact with you. Now, so there's that type of them making you feel blissed out. They'll make you feel blissed out to make you feel all religious, kind of a religious feeling. Now, the higher density beings, it is just their consciousness vibration. Your vibration starts vibrating. So you feel the effects of that.
And so just could you describe the emotional feelings? Like, just give us some adjectives and some descriptive language about how does it actually feel?
Words that when I've been in positions to communicate through, I can't receive communicating because it's words which is I feel like the cable can handle a certain current before it burns up. It feels like the current's being turned up extremely high.
Now, Emery, one of the most fascinating things for me is when you describe being in an alien autopsy and that you had certain beings come in and assist you in the autopsy. Now, this is like Emery's greatest hits, so you guys might have heard this, but I really want this to be out here again. So, could you describe for us, first of all, just give us one of the beings, or maybe more than one of the beings that you were talking to in the OR, and how did this communication take place, and what kind of communication was it?
This will take 30 minutes to answer.
Perfect. I'll be right back.
Go for it.
Drop the mic.
He dropped the mic! Yeah!
Just like when you come home from work with your family, you might be in a great mood. You might not be. But the fact is, because your frequency is at that mood, that emotion, you transmit that frequency. So you could actually turn your whole household into a big cluster real quick. a stream for the universe to see, and people will be held responsible for what's done here on this planet.
So since your presence has a tendency to occupy the space when you arrive,
I'm just a regular guy with a regular dog.
I don't think you were here when I was doing the opening intro, but I was talking about meeting rock stars. This is perfectly normal behavior. This is a serum. He has to ingest a certain serum to not shapeshift.
That's classified. Shame on you.
I knew that backpack had something to do with this. Okay, Corey has lost his mic, so he probably needs a new battery. That's why I always... Oh, there you go. We're good. So anyway, I was talking about meeting rock stars and how if you're all, oh my god, wow, it's so amazing, you know, you'll get like 30 seconds tops. Security. But if you're totally relaxed, and you don't really care, you're like, hey man, what's going on? Then they'll talk to you for an hour, right? And so I'm trying to give people here, there's a reason why I did all the things that I did. Everybody was like, David spent 20 minutes talking about meeting rock stars. Well, okay, good.
Did you invite me on stage?
I wanted to make sure Corey had a chance to talk. Let's put it that way. I just know how these things go. There's a strategy.
Roast, we can roast.
My point in bringing this up was that I think a lot of us here, whether you think you're ready or not, okay, I believe for myself, the reason why I was able to get this telepathic contact with these beings is I might be there for an hour, and I am talking robotically like this. And I know that when I transcribe this later on, it's going to be this amazing stuff that predicts the future and has these beautiful messages from extraterrestrials for me, and I'll see these beings in white robes, and I'll, you know, sometimes I'll report what I'm seeing as I'm hearing the stuff. Maybe recordings, for the most part. My point is, if I had had that response like fans do when they go backstage at rock concert, oh my god, extraterrestrials are talking to me, holy crap, what are they saying? I'm interested. If I got into that state, it's immediately going to break the contact. So the point is, you have to kind of not really, you don't want to see them as anything that special, you want to just be really relaxed, really nonchalant, so that you can stay bored, you can stay disinterested, you just let the thing happen, you let the communication happen. So Emery, given the fact that you've had a lot of this type of telepathic experience, how do you think that what I just said would apply to people here in terms of getting the chance to meet extraterrestrials? What is the set that they have to be ready?
I think the most important thing first is to really come to reality that we're not alone. And I know most of you here are like that, except for a couple of people. But you are watching me. And what that means is you can't have any fear. Because we want to go to another country and learn about them. And just because we have a language barrier, that's okay. Just because we can't talk to dolphins don't mean they're conscious. Right?
Don't mean they're not conscious.
I mean, they're not conscious, right? Sorry, no, it doesn't mean they're not conscious.
You know, everybody would have flamed you on YouTube if I had to fix that one.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, anything I read or anything I do, he checks everything out, makes sure I don't get hammered out there. Because everyone wants to say something. But getting out there, which these two have been through, I'm a newbie. Getting back to, so no fear is the biggest thing, is to say, hey, and saying it out loud, and actually projecting that, like when we pray. Say, hey, I'm ready to make contact, and I'm not fearful of it. No matter what that is. So please show yourself in a safe and effective way that can happen for you. For us, and also so effective for them, so they do come. Because now, as you know, since the 50s and 60s and 70s, craft systems don't come down here now like they were seen all the time because of the huge light detectors and devices we have out there to destroy any type of craft that come in. Right? And that is a deterrent. So if they are advanced enough to holographically image themselves or project themselves or bilocate themselves, especially interdimensional beings. That's the other thing. There's so many different types of beings. Everyone's like, well, what's the best one you see? Yeah, of course we fantastically like those kind of things, but most of the part they're these 5-star beings. 2 arms, 2 heads. I mean, 2 arms.
Really? You just let it out.
2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Some have to fix. But one is we have to. Well, no, there's conjoined twins. You guys are horrible. I'm a scientist, guys. Not a conjoined twins. I'm gonna have to.
Emery Smith, the man with 2 brains.
But that's how we have to prepare ourselves that way. Meditation is really good. And not getting caught up in all the negativity of the world, because it's always there. Let's focus on positivity. You know how positivity comes? Positivity comes. It starts with you. You guys have to start thinking this way, because what happens, Dave, when we get a good collective together, we all start thinking. It's rolling the whole thing. I was trying to push it on the track.
It's not Kool-Aid anymore. We have green tea in the back. People are concerned about color people, and they didn't like the show. are there certain practices that we could have here that would help us to be ready for the actual in-person, really gee-whiz stuff?
Beings who are coming down and visiting people face-to-face during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. The consciousness now that these beings come and visit the average human. So they fit to Christ complex. It happens the most humble people begin to, why are they coming to me? I must be special. Why so special? That's what perspective of the right way to deal with our personality distortions that we haven't dealt with yet. Those personality distortions are usually what stands in the way of the higher self-communication that occurs between the other being and you. Like, oh no, this person has a distortion towards this. If they have an in-person communication with them, it's going to be
So, based on what Emery was saying about, like, being angry or something, would that be classified as a personality distortion that would have impacted his communication with his beings in the OR?
It's more of a, I guess, a symptom of a personality distortion. Why is the person not in control, or why are they having agitation? What was their trigger? You got to trace all of that back through all of the painful, unpleasant genesis. You getting angry is just a symptom of the
So another thing that I'd like to put on the record here, because the format of the hospital is only one of asking questions that I should really share with you, is that in my telepathic contacts that really were very active between 1990, the end of 96 through 2000, is when I really was getting most of this stuff happening. And as I became more public, I became very concerned about all the hate I was receiving on the internet and how it could cloud my mind and make the information tainted somehow, because I didn't have that sort of childlike jubilation and glee about my life anymore. And so I was afraid of doing the work anymore, because if you have that kind of negative influence in your head when you're doing it, it can really hit the wrong place. So,
deceived by what is a positive being in contact with you.
right, so when people start to have a sense of being a savior, this kind of thing, I equate that to the starstruck thing that you get when you meet a rock star. Because part of it is, oh my God, I'm so special. Oh my God, I'm backstage. I'm meeting one of the gods of our society. This guy's on TV. I've seen him so many times. I love his music, That's what you don't want. In the same sense, I don't even talk about the fact that I have these contacts for the most part, because I don't want to try to steer people into seeing me as being different. But it appears now that I'm at a point where I'm being asked in my dreams very precisely and consistently, I need to talk about this. So I want to point out something very interesting parallel between all three of us and what we've had happen to us. You gotta understand, when I was doing these readings, that I was getting pages and pages of direct speaking documentation. Speaking ultimately in a pretty plain way. My understanding was very cryptic, but it got a lot crazy to understand as time went on. But they never let up on me. They never stopped criticizing me about being too afraid. They didn't like my diet. They wanted me to eat a whole different way. All this kind of stuff happened. I mean, look at Corey Good's body now compared to where he was when we started the show. It's unbelievable. So I'm seeing this parallelism here, and when we're looking at this solar flash that's coming our way, what were you told, Corey, about what we need to do to be prepared for this event? What did they instruct people about how to be ready for this thing?
these things, and we're not going to the energy. It's not going to pass through us. It's going to burn up the wire.
Well, again, this is a very fascinating real-time discovery because in all these years of readings, of which I have, many hundreds of pages total of all the things that were said, which I was supposed to be sharing with people, and now I'm going to finally start doing it, but I suppressed it for a long time, basically because I wanted to build credibility in the scientific arena, because people really don't like changing unless they're open to it. They think, oh my God, you just made all this stuff up. And all those time travel stories, you just made all that stuff up. I have witnesses. I have people. I did a business with these readings from 98 to 2005. I had 500 clients. I had some amazing things happen. If the client was ready for it, certain people would get stuff like, for example, there was one lady where the beings described the lyrics. They quoted from her poems and songs, and I didn't even know that she wrote songs. They literally quoted the poems and then explained to her what the subconscious reasons were for why she wrote them. And so she was literally sobbing on the phone, and one of the things I had to train myself to do is to not get out of trance when people told me to lose it on the phone, to stay in this robotic consciousness, I mean, the voice could get fast. Like, if I really got into it, it would be coming out faster than I could possibly talk normally, and just perfect transcribing. If you transcribe it, it's flawless sentence structure. It's very normal for people to have that kind of an experience. Emery, getting back to you for a minute now. No, don't laugh. Come on. I'm trying to give everyone a chance. It's interesting that you had reported that it was called a spiritual mass because over and over again, we never talked about this, the beings reported karma as a gravitational well on your timeline. And what they also said was the arrow of time points in the direction you're facing, so most people are stuck in a... circuit. They're like in a loop where they think that they're going forward into the future, but they're really going through a circle, and there's this gravity well on the circle that keeps pulling them back. And until you clear that karma, you're basically repeating the same lessons in life over and over again. Would you agree with me? So Emery, based on your experience of seeing not only your own in-person contact with ETs and telepathic experiences, but actually facilitating this for others, how does the karma stand in the way of somebody actually getting these contacts?
I believe that a lot of the emotional stress we carry is programmed from something. It's a program. that's about as years more advanced than us because they didn't have this crazy 300 major corporation cabal killing Tesla and Stubblefield so we can get these anti-gravitic and zero-point energy devices out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just one thing that you said that I want to make sure isn't misunderstood.
I'm not really...
No, it wasn't that. That I understand.
Just maybe 2%.
We're looking at the idea of the ultimate arbiter of truth, the ultimate arbiter of good or bad, right? And you say there is no good or bad, but really, let's just be more clear. I want to see if you agree with me, because this is what's in the Law of One, so my readings will also teach me. There's only one of us here. You kind of just said that about me.
100%.
Right? So because of this, the Law of One is really, really big on what they call the first distortion in the Law of One. You see this term over and over again, you're like, what the hell is first distortion? They use it like hundreds of times. And then it explains the first distortion is free will. The universe will allow you to pick up a gun and shoot somebody and kill them. That might very well be allowed. But then you will have to come back in another lifetime, or maybe within that lifetime, and have somebody do the same thing to you. And because that other person is you, and there's only one of us here, there is an absolute karmic balance for actions that infringe on free will. So obviously, the goal is for us to learn how to always be positive and forgiving and supportive to one another, so that we're not creating these needless experiences that are going to have to come back into our own life and give us these very painful things. Would you agree with that, Edward?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we're all at a different level of education in this karmatic spiritual value of astral state. Some in preschool, some are already graduated. But the thing is, don't forget, that's a part of you. My little preschool friend here is part of me.
Oh,
so
speak for
I
yourself.
catch up. And then, you know, my PhD here is also at a different level. So I got to balance these two guys.
Well, see, he's the guy that's got to write the check at the end of this thing. I think that's why that happened.
They're inside. So we're only as fast, you know, as our slowest runner, we say in the military when we're all running. So we have to do that. So we have to pick each other up. We have to take everyone together on this, because we're all one. Does that answer it?
Yeah, very good, very good. Give him a big round of applause. So we are now in the final 15-minute window before we're going to do this meditation, and this is a very important part of what we're here for. And I want to hand it back to Corey now. Since he's relieved himself in the bathroom, he's probably going to be ready for everything he needs to do here.
I was counting on that intermission.
You don't get one with me. It just goes.
That's what I like.
Let's talk. I mean, I could do the science and all this stuff, and maybe I'll insert some of that as we go. But could you explain, Corey, why you're doing an event called Dimensions of Disclosure, talking about wanting to have full disclosure and wanting to get this information out to the public? Why do we need to focus on something like meditation? What's the underlying agenda of these meetings? Why do it matters? Can you feel your underpants?
I tell you what, I was so excited about having the event here because it was going to be a drive, but we ended up traveling down to Dallas because my stepdad, we drove back right before this. Exhausted, so
Why meditation?
okay, meditation. This is of consciousness to manifest. And I said this earlier today, the biggest trick that the cabal pulled over us was taking away our knowledge of our co-creating abilities. And then they started to manipulate it on other control systems. And they trick us into using our co-creative abilities to manifest a negative reality. And this is us taking back that power and using our magic to manifest a positive reality.
Somebody from the audience, Corey, came up to me after my talk yesterday. Or no, it was actually at the dinner. It was at the dinner. And he brought up something from way back when we first started doing Cosmic that I'd forgotten about. And it was something the topics touched on as well. You were told that these so-called Draco reptilians that are here on Earth had created some kind of mind control mass system that affects how everybody's mind and heart and spirit is working. And you were also told that at some point that system would break. So could you go into that a little bit about that story of what is this mind control system and what are we expecting is going to happen when it breaks?
Yes, it is a mixture of technology as well as the way the electricity travels to the earth through the ley lines. They disturbed the natural ley lines where the energy travels through the earth naturally. They diverted it. And at the same time, the way that the energy was passing through the earth before allowed us to be more psychically attuned and communicating with each other. We also had more access to higher self type, I guess, technology. They wanted to remove that from our consciousness. They didn't want us to know about it. So that affecting the grids had that effect on us. And then they also had added to that technology that was in space and also on Earth, connecting through those grid lines that affect our consciousness and keep us asleep. I've been told, since the spheres came and the energies have increased, the technology doesn't hardly work. They've got it tuned up all the way just to have a small effect on the consciousness of humanity.
And Emery, that sounds a lot like what you were just saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more scientific. I think about like scalar hypnometry because of the devices I was, introduced to, and this might be a reverse engineering of what they have done because the science he's talking about is real. It's real science, and it makes sense. I don't know what whole Draco thing, but I agree with what you're saying because it's already happened and it's happening. And I really believe that this meditation and things that we do consistently with a good collective really brings that field. Because remember, it's a field. We're all energy.
Yeah, I think also what has had an effect is that there are a lot of star seeds that their mission is to come back and reactivate these grids. People in this room have been going to sacred sites and reactivate them and set that circuit back up to work properly again through the ley lines.
There is no try.
Slow down there, Turbo.
Now, you were told, though, Corey, that at some point that there would be a decisive breakdown of that system from even being able to do what it was doing. It would just cease to work. And that there would be some kind of sudden effect, sudden change in people's consciousness. Could you describe that?
Yes, it's multi-layered. It will... It's coming off of a drug all of a sudden for everyone. It's when it's been affecting our consciousness. All of a sudden, it's like
interstellar cloud that our solar system is drifting into. And two different types of things would happen depending on who you are. Could you go through that again real quick?
What they did is they flew out to these gas clouds, plural. There were numbers of them. The Earth passes through, then goes through a clear patch, then passes through the densities of these clouds. They went out to these clouds, nebulous clouds, which are just energy, and they measured it. And while they were out there, they noticed that it was having a psychological effect on the crew. They documented it, scientists had to repeat it. So they, when they runs programs, they would actually take our own people and, people like do data entry, on ships. They would put them in a room, several of them to do data entry, and psychological alcohol. They would put them in and watch them. And these people are working, they just have no idea what's going on, and then they begin to pipe in this energy. And people that were very positive, blissed out time. And the people that were of a negative polarity would do the opposite, become extremely agitated and unpleasant.
So, Emery, do you think this is part of the reason why, when you do these CE5s, that some people get so triggered that they actually become angry and they just storm off?
Yeah, they have that kind of program there that they can't accept that. It's happened lots of times where craft would come in, fly in. You've heard about this in history where ships would go to a different civilization and the natives never saw a ship, but they see people walking on the water. Because your brain can't assimilate that, because what Corey said is we're not turned on yet. But we're getting turned on. And we are ascending, and we are getting this every day. So think of it as a good way, but it is true. This does happen with a lot of the majority of people who don't want to really accept this yet, which is okay. They're just at a different level. And it needs to be activated. And we're getting activated with Stardust all day long. So you guys know. And we're doing it with each other. Sound and meditating and getting together like this. It's an activation. Every time you get to stars, you see your DNA is changed when you measure it. Astronauts. Twin astronauts. One goes out, one sits here. Twins. One's an astronaut, one's not. It stays on the land. This is all public information. You've probably heard this. Their DNA is now changed. Now, why is this DNA changed? There's a good thing, 5,000 feet up there, floating around. It gets back to DNA is completely different. Something going on. There's an activation of some sort that are happening through the Earth, through the energetic fields, and of course, interdimensionally.
Well, the Chinese did research where they took seeds for, like, tomatoes and zucchini and stuff, flew them up into space, they grow the vegetables back here on Earth, and they're like the big super large, crazy, extra growth. That's been documented. So, yeah, a lot of this kind of stuff. So I want both of you, before we start this, Emery, we'll start with you since you're already standing, don't want to change it. Could you tell us real quickly, since we all agree that we're going through a quantum leap, I just want to get a nice, short, so we got like 3 minutes before we're going to start this thing. What do you, based on the ETs you've already seen, what do you think we will experience if all of us are fortunate enough to have done our homework to be ready for this quantum leap in evolution? What will it be like? What will our minds be like? What will our lives be like as we go through this?
Yeah, we're going to live a lot longer. We're going to be able to do a lot of self-sustainability stuff where we're not using gas, coal, and oil. We're going to be able to change our genetics and DNA. We're going to be able to get rid of cancers and tumors and diabetes and all this stuff. And it's going to happen pretty quick within the next, 3 to 5 years, I believe.
I'm just saying, I haven't been wrong yet.
Corey, again, we have this ascension message. It's been coming in very strongly. It was the main theme of all my contacts all those years. It's the main theme in the Law of One. It's the appears the beings that did the Law of One contacted you to bring this message to the next level. So what do you see happening? And maybe we could talk about some of what the Anshar told you and what their society is like. What do you see happening as we go into this new stage of evolution? What will we be like?
We're going to be connected in a way that we're unprepared for. That this ascension is a consciousness ascension. That our consciousness is going to expand and blend in a way that we're going to approach all of our problems from a more cohesive way. Like, 7 billion processors working on a problem in tandem instead of working on all their own individual issues to process. So it's going to be a quantum leap in the way we approach each other and our problems.
Very good. So I got to fill 1 minute now. So why don't we bring up the singing bowl person? I know the bowl is there.
You've got 40 seconds.
But we got to have a player of the bowl. I think that's her over there. Or maybe she just has to go to the bathroom. I don't know.
We can just
Okay. All right. I guess that's you. Okay, great. So we're about to turn into 11.
Tomorrow is my 76th revolution around the sun, and that's the way my birthday is tomorrow. I will be, I don't even think of it the way other people.
76?
76.
Look at you.
How
does it happen?
I swear, I never bought it. I'm telling you the truth. I do not buy into the numbers. So I have been living at a high energy for a long time.
That's why it's there.
So, yeah.
Hello and welcome to this edition.
All right, here we go. It's 11:11. We're going to do this. Okay. I'd like you guys to close your eyes and put both feet flat on the floor. Well, Corey, you can't really do that because you got like 6 inches too high. Everybody else. And take a nice, relaxing, deep breath in. Hold it. Just let it go. And then take another nice, deep breath. yourself becoming more and more relaxed. Going deeper into the corridors of your mind. And exploration of your truest and deepest self. As you keep becoming more and more relaxed, you can completely let go of any words that may be spoken in this time. And you start listening to the cracks between the words. No concern
About following the content of the words. Tuning to information.
О, 2 упаковки корма Нямс по цене одной и с бесплатной доставкой. Подробно.
I'm David Wilcock, and I welcome you to Disclosure. This is our opportunity to have a fireside chat about some of the most fascinating information ever put forward by anyone who has been writing books and doing research. What we have here is a 14-episode miniseries on ancient history. If you think that you know all there is to know about ancient history, you may be very surprised. Never before have we had such an array of incredible talent put together in a synergistic sequence where one concept builds upon the next, and we have all these guys talking to you and talking to me, because I'm interviewing them, about some of the most fascinating mysteries in Earth's primordial past. Now, skeptics oftentimes believe that we have nailed down the truth. There's nothing more that really needs to be discovered, and that orthodox mainstream thought is infallible. This is much like a religion, the belief that what we know now is all we need to know. Skeptics also can be very aggressive and very sarcastic and shaming and demeaning in the way that they try to convey their opinions. We are not looking at anything here that requires us to suspend disbelief. We're not looking at fantasy. We're not looking at fiction. And we're not looking at something that was channeled by angelic beings from higher realms. We're looking at straight-ahead, hardcore empirical data that can be researched. Anybody has the opportunity. It's democratic. You can go out there. You can verify this stuff for yourself. The guy we're starting with today is Graham Hancock. And Hancock is specifically one of the most brilliant pioneers in the entire field of ancient civilizations. In 1995, he released Fingerprints of the Gods. I had it as soon as it came out. I'd already read 300 books by that point on this topic. I was blown away by what Graham Hancock had to say. In the traditional view, civilization begins with the so-called Fertile Crescent and Sumeria.
And then it progresses forward to ancient Greece, and this is the first time that we have any really significant architecture and roads and systems of law. Some of that does occur in Sumer, but then it kind of grows into its fruition in ancient Greece. The new knowledge is the idea that there was a highly advanced ancient civilization before Sumer, before all of this stuff took place. And that what we think of as recorded history is, in fact, not the only history that's been recorded. It's only the approved version of history. And the deeper truth may involve the concept that there was a civilization that had greater technology than we have now, and that was wiped away in a gigantic catastrophe that started roughly 12,980 years ago, and then put the Earth into a profound period of cold for 1,600 years, after which time there was yet another catastrophe, and both of these catastrophes involved massive flooding and literally wiped the surface clean of the Earth, taking away whatever remnant of this foreign civilization had once existed. So we're going to explore this as we get into this first episode of Disclosure with Graham Hancock. Check it out. All right, Graham Hancock. I am obviously a friend of yours, a huge fan. What you did with Fingerprints of the Gods for me was a phenomenal thing. I had been reading 300 books on ancient civilizations up until I found yours, and I started to get really tired of it because everybody's trumpeting the same data. Everybody's got the Rhodes calculator. Everybody talks about Stonehenge. The antediluvian flood maps. And then along comes this book. I think it was 1995. I just graduated from college. And bam, this guy has got all of the best stuff that I had seen in all these 300 books I've been reading, and other stuff that I never found before. So a lot of people know you for that.
Definitely. It's definitely my best known book.
Right. And that was a major seller, right? Like, you sold a lot of copies.
I owned 5 million copies of that book, of which 2.5 million in hardback in Japan.
Wow, really?
And the other 2.5 million around the world. It became a bit of a sensation.
That's incredible. That's an incredible.
Yeah, it was.
You can't do that now.
You can't do that now. It was a phenomenon. Yeah, it was one of those things. It caught a wave. There was a lot of new stuff in the air. There was a suggestion that maybe we've got the story of civilization wrong, and I think I was fortunate to write Fingerprints when I did. I think it caught that moment. If I had published it some years earlier or some years later, I don't think it would have had that impact.
And it is true that actually the people that wrote the movie 2012 optioned rights to it.
They did indeed. They optioned the rights, and if you can bear to sit through the 20 minutes of credits at the end of that movie, you will see that it does say at the very last line, inspired in part by the book Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Yes.
Well, 2012 is allegedly a disaster movie in modern times.
Yeah.
Why would they use your book for that?
Well, actually, I would have liked to have, were I a producer, which I'm not, I would have liked to have seen that movie delve a little more into archaeology.
Yeah.
But what they took from that book, I would say, was just one thing, which was, as far as I know, Fingerprints is the first book that has connected the Mayan calendar with Charles Hapgood's notion of Earth crust displacement, and those two issues were actually key to the scenario in the movie 2012.
And let me
they didn't take anything else from it.
Let me just briefly toss in for people who don't know that Hapgood's theory is that the external crust could slide over the mantle.
That's right.
And therefore the whole Earth has a shift in its crust, even though the inner part is still in the same place.
Indeed, and rather like the skin of an orange moving around the fruit, to give an analogy. And this was the mechanism envisaged in the movie 2012 for the cataclysm that they portrayed there, because Roland Emmerich does do big cataclysm movies, and this was at the heart of that idea. I think that I definitely would have liked to have seen more archaeology in the story, but they focused on the big effects. And
it seems strange that they would want to option Fingerprints of the Gods for a movie that only barely touches on 2 little data points.
Well, see, as the project developed, their ideas of what they were going to do with the project changed, and they became more focused on the cataclysm and less perhaps on the backstory to the cataclysm. That's what they became focused on.
So there may have been some Mayan calendar stuff in the earlier drafts of the script and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and indeed.
Okay. Before we go into your story, because I want to do the whole arc, if you were going to try to briefly summarize what you learned from Fingerprints of the Gods, what would you say is the hypothesis or the goal of Fingerprints of the Gods?
At the heart of it, that we are a species with amnesia, that there has been a major forgotten episode of history, and we are not taking that forgotten episode into account in our understanding of who we are and why we're here. That has been buried, partly as a result of global cataclysmic events 12,980 years ago, thereabouts, and partly because there are forces at work in our society that don't want that information, that want the idea of a simple, linear development from primitive Stone Age hunter-gatherers through settled civilization to us, the apex and pinnacle of the human story. And if you're committed to that timeline, then it's very annoying to discover that there was an earlier episode of civilization when humanity did achieve a very high level, which was brought cataclysmically to an end so massively and so severely as the universe that mankind had been begin again like children with no memory. I think there are people in those moments, but I don't think they would share. So that's the message of the whole thing.
People who don't want this to be shared. It appears that there has been a narrative constructed in the average person's mind in which they might listen to what you just said, but then they'll say, well, there's no evidence.
Yeah, because the whole institution of archaeology and mainstream history has set before the public, through the media, through the education system, a timeline for the story of human civilization. And that timeline has become embedded in the way that we think about ourselves. And that timeline is this linear story from primitive cavemen to smart, super sophisticated, modern human beings, and that we're supposed to have gone through certain episodes of development. You know, we started to make agriculture. That agriculture provided the possibility for a leisure class who could become the priests and kings in the cities. And we went on from there. Yes, there were some ups and downs, but by and large, it's been a straight, clean story. And what disturbs that is the possibility that we've forgotten a whole episode of earlier civilization and new bits of archaeology that are coming out, like the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which cannot be denied by the mainstream, because mainstream archaeologists have actually found that archaeology themselves create ripples in this timeline and make it difficult to explain. You see, if you're telling people that hunter-gatherers were this very simple kind of society, were not capable of large-scale feats of engineering and construction, and then suddenly in the hunter-gatherer epoch, before anything like a city or a civilization is supposed to have existed, you have a very large-scale project with enormous stone circles and multi-ton megaliths being put up and requiring intense organizational skills, management of a workforce, a plan, all of that in place. It doesn't fit with the picture we've been given of what our ancestors are supposed to have been like at that time. And when I first went to Göbekli Tepe and talked to Klaus Schmidt, the excavator, who unfortunately has recently, but I had opportunity to spend 3 days walking around that site with Klaus Schmidt in 2013. And I said to him, what does it feel like to be the man who's discovered the site that's rewriting history? And he was very careful. He said, no, I prefer not to say it's rewriting history. I prefer to say it's adding a new chapter to history. That seems to be how mainstream archaeology is trying to finesse this. They still don't want their basic timeline, their basic story of human progress to be disturbed by this. They just want to fit it in to the existing model. I believe it won't fit into the existing model. It's going to overthrow everything.
The conventional archaeologists will attack guys like you. I've seen this online a bunch of times. They say, if guys like Graham Hancock say that this civilization was here on Earth and it was very advanced, show me the pottery shards, show me the linear curve of how they built up to the point to be able to manipulate these large blocks of stone.
That's what they say, and that's why Göbekli Tepe is becoming a serious problem for them. Because that, for example, that particular point was made in relation to the Great Sphinx of Giza, and the notion that the Great Sphinx might be vastly older than 2,500 BC. Well, the argument of archaeology was, how could that be so? There is no other large-scale monument, which is 12,000 plus years old anywhere in the world. If there was a culture that could make the Sphinx 12,500 years ago, then surely it must have made other monuments as well. Well, suddenly we have that other monument. We have Göbekli Tepe, and it's not even very far from the Sphinx. It's true. So it becomes the whole notion that the Sphinx may be much older suddenly becomes much more credible than it was before. I think the second point, which archaeologists are not taking into account, archaeologists tend to be uniformitarians. They don't really like cataclysms very much, and they don't, in my view, take enough account of the role of cataclysmic events in the story of human civilization. And again, there's new information and new evidence here. We now know it's really no longer a dispute that the Earth was hit by a fragmenting comet round about 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years. You can bring the resolution down that kind to a very exact date from the Greenland ice cores, because when comets hit the Earth, they leave a signature in the chemistry of the Earth all over the planet. Nanodiamonds, iridium, platinum. There are remnants, and these have been preserved in the Greenland ice cores, and we can say for sure this event happened 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years. And it initiated an episode that geologists have been aware of for a very long time, which they call the Younger Dryas. You see, 12,980 years ago, the Earth was coming out of the Ice Age. The Ice Age reached its maximum extent 21,300 years ago, approximately. And there began a gradual meltdown, not always gradual. There were some episodes of rapid flooding during that story, but it was a process of warming. And then suddenly, 12,980 years ago, for reasons that until recently it's not been possible to explain, the Earth was plunged back into a dramatic refreeze. It went back to colder than it had been at the coldest point of the Ice Age. And that's the episode that they call the Younger Dryas, and it lasts from 12,980 years ago, give or take 5 years, down to 11,600 years ago, when suddenly the cold lifts and the Earth resumes its warming process. You have roughly 1,600, 1,700 years of radical, unexplained deep freeze. We now know why that happened. It happened because of that comet, which fragmented. Its fragments hit many different parts of the Earth, but the greatest impact of all was in North America, and it was on the North American ice cap. That's why there isn't a crater, because the ice cap was best part of 1.5 miles to 2 miles deep. Okay, and that fragmenting comet smacked into the ice cap. The crater was made in ice, not in the body of the Earth, and that's why we don't see the crater today. But what we do see are the chemical signatures of that impact all over the world. So the comet hits. The initial effect is dramatic large-scale flooding, because the ice cap is suddenly liquidized. There's a huge flooding event results from that, which leaves scars all over the North American landscape. And then enormous quantities of dust are thrown up into the upper atmosphere. These enshroud the Earth completely in a mantle of dust, which stops the sun's rays reaching the Earth. Then we go into the deep phase, the upper dryas, because the sun's warming effect on the Earth is no longer happening, and it takes 1,600 or so years for that dust mantle to disperse. It's possible that the Earth interacted again with fragments of that comet, and that may be part of why it ends rather suddenly about 11,600 years ago.
What's the data on sea level? What did it do to sea level?
Well, then you have a very rapid episode of sea level rise, exactly following 11,600 years ago. So you have instant flooding, 12,980. Sea level goes up. Then it goes down again, because you go into a freeze. Then 11,600 years ago, the Earth is suddenly warming up very rapidly, and sea level rises very rapidly. And it's not an accident that 11,600 years ago is exactly the period that Plato pointed to in the story of Atlantis, because he said that Atlantis was destroyed, submerged by a giant flood and earthquakes 9,000 years before the time of Solon. And 9,000 years, Solon is 600 BC, so that's 9,600 BC. That is 11,600 years ago. That is the end of the Younger Dryas. Now, how could Plato have made that up? It connects perfectly.
To try to say that that isn't a link is a conspiracy theory.
I believe it's a conspiracy theory. To dismiss that, as mainstream academics have done, they've tried every way to make Plato not say there was a cataclysm 11,600 years ago. They even say that he's talking about months instead of years. I mean, this was Plato. When he said years, he meant years.
Yeah.
Solon was his own ancestor. He received this story through Solon. He was reporting what for him was a very strong and definite fact, that there had been an event that had destroyed a great civilization 9,000 years before the time of Solon. And in our time frame, that is 11,600 years before our time. It just all adds up. So I think it's going to become more and more difficult for mainstream archaeology to dismiss this as we start seeing new evidence emerging all over the world. First of all, we now have a smoking gun. We didn't have that before. Yes, we all understood that the end of the Ice Age was cataclysmic, but we didn't have an actual, very specific smoking gun. See, when I wrote Fingerprints of Gods, I focused very much on the window between 12,000 and 30,000 years ago. And the moment that the comet hits the Earth, which we now know, but I did not know when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, is 12,980 years ago. Okay, that is exactly in that window. I wasn't able to give my readers a smoking gun when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, rather just to say
didn't remember reading that. So
it isn't in there because the evidence on the comet had not been discovered in 1995. This has all come out since 2007, and there's been a debate in science, but the evidence keeps coming in, and really no serious geologist is now disputing that the Earth was hit by a comet 12,980 years ago, and then you have this 1,600-year deep freeze, and 11,600 years ago we come out of it. And the whole story of human civilization, as we have it today, all unfolds in that last 11,600 years. And what happens before that is a blank. And I would say the reason that it's a blank is because of this horrendous cataclysm. We know that many of the great megamountains, the rhinos, died out during the Younger Dryas, and we now know what caused the Younger Dryas. So we're getting much closer to understanding what happened and why we are a species with amnesia.
Well, let me put the tinfoil hat on real snug here for a moment. Is it possible? That's the ancient alien signature line, right? Is it possible? Is it possible that someone disliked whoever was here on Earth? Maybe there was a war. Maybe they had gotten themselves in a lot of trouble. And that somebody had the ability to take that comet and deliberately make sure that it was going to hit the ice cap.
That's a very interesting speculation, I have to say. Because, there are serious studies now being done unfortunately by the warmongers in our own civilization. One of the weapons they're looking at is how do we use an asteroid as a weapon, right? How do we target an asteroid at our quote-unquote enemies? What a shame, what a horror that human beings could even think that way, that our imagination could go in that direction, then maybe that's in our DNA in some way.
Right.
So it is not impossible. I can't sit here and say no, that's absolutely impossible. That somebody could have fired that comet at us or deflected it from its orbit to the point where it interacted with the Earth in cataclysmic ways.
You and I spoke in the car on the way here about the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch describes fallen angels, the Watchers, and that they interbred with humanity, that they created a race of giants, and that in the aftermath of that, Enoch was asked by the giants to talk to the Elohim, or God, and say, please don't wipe us out, because God, Elohim, said, you guys have become wicked and you need to be purged from the earth. And that apparently was the genesis of Noah's flood. Do you believe that we're talking about the biblical flood here?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I think the biblical flood needs not to be seen in isolation. We need to understand that that is part of a global tradition of a cataclysmic flood. Often, by the way, accompanied by a radical deep freeze. If you look at the cataclysmic myths in Iran, for example, they don't speak so much of a flood, they speak more of a terrible freeze, a dragon that caused the world to freeze. And the Iranian Noah figure, who's called Yima, actually doesn't create an ark, he creates an underground sanctuary into which human beings go, where the seeds of all life are preserved. The same story is told all around the world, and with interestingly different angles on it. In some cases it's a flood, in some cases, as in the case of the Iranian myths, it's a deep freeze. And what we now know is that both things happened. There was flooding and there was a deep freeze, and the biblical story of the flood is part of that global tradition, and it's well understood. There's been very good scholarship on this, that the biblical flood is genetically related to the Gilgamesh epic from Sumer, and really we're looking at one story told in a number of different ways.
Well, I'm thinking of Rand and Rose Flemath and When the Sky Fell.
Yes, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, they did really fantastic work, and they were the ones who raised working with the Earth crust displacement theory of Charles Hapgood. They were the ones who worked with and brought before the public the notion that Antarctica might have been the home of the lost civilization. And there's another author whose work is overlooked but deserves to be paid attention to, and that is Flavio Barbiero, who's an Italian author, a very scholarly man, who actually published a book called Civilization Under the Ice. I can't say it in Italian. It was published in the Italian language. Civilization Under the Ice, back in 1973 or 74, way before the Flemaths or me or anybody was working on this, suggesting that Antarctica might have been the site of Atlantis. And what's interesting about Flavio Barbiero's work is that he connects this to a comet impact. Flavio Barbiero is looking at pole shift or Earth crust displacement, but he is considering the process that sets the Earth crust displacement in motion. And what he suggests is that the Earth is hit a glancing blow by a huge astronomical object, by a large comet, and that imparts the momentum that sets the crust in motion, or that creates the pole shift. So he was very, very far ahead of his time in that there is a history to these ideas, and it's important to recognize Flavio's part.
Have you looked into how long most of the stuff that we have now would last if there was a pole shift? I mean, because metal rusts away, right? It doesn't.
Absolutely. I don't think that our civilization is very solidly founded. I think we could lose it all very rapidly. We are putting ourselves in danger in a number of ways, and one of those ways is the intense specialization of our civilization. That everybody is a specialist at something, but nobody knows how to do everything. We're all very interdependent. We take so much for granted. There's food in the supermarket. Well, what does that all come down to? There's the concept called just-in-time delivery of food. we actually have about 3 days of food supply in our cities. And if the supply line was cut, as it would be by a major cataclysm, you would have people starving in our cities within weeks, probably within days. It would be that bad, and you would then have riots. You would have massive civil disorder taking place. We've already seen it with what, in these terms, are very small-scale events like Hurricane Katrina. The chaos that caused. Imagine that multiplied 1,000 times. Imagine a Katrina, but 1,000 times larger, affecting the advanced technological societies of the world. Imagine an event that raises sea level overnight 30 feet, flooding every coastal city in the world. Would our civilization survive that? I don't think so. I don't think we have the psychic resources to survive that. I think we're psychically very fragile. We're all very comfortable in our lives. We are all interdependent. Very few of us actually know how to survive. There are people who take survival seriously and would know how to survive. But it's very interesting if you look at the NASA survey of the areas of the Earth that might have precipitated by Mark. You can see these wonderful bright-haired areas in the United States, in Europe, India, and also increasingly bright-haired. And then you can see other areas that are dark, like the Amazon rainforest, or like Central Africa, completely dark. It's very interesting.
This French researcher named Schwaller de Lucas. I tried to get through his book Temple of Man, and as I say in the interview, I enjoyed the pictures. That's about as much as I could do. So with West, we're going to hear some very interesting stuff about what did de Lucas contribute to the field of Egyptology in general, and specifically, how do we use the Sphinx and a new site in Turkey to help date ourselves much older than we ever thought we were before. That's coming up next time here on Disclosure, and I thank you for watching.
So this brings us to the pineal gland, something that I talked about in my other video, 2012 Enigma, which I never would have imagined that by December 1st, 2008, that video was #1 most viewed on Google for that day. It's astonishing. It's a thing that happened. And it's done a lot of good that it got so popular. But I do talk about the pineal gland at some length in that video. And here I want to talk about the pineal gland specifically as the center in the brain, the physiological center that is the access point between your astral body that's out there floating around and the physical body. Now, let's say you're trying to solve this scientific problem and you're trying to discover calculus, you're trying to discover decimal fractions, you're trying to discover color photography, you're working on the problem. I believe that you have this astral body that's actually going around and looking for people who are working on the same problem in the source field. And when you see somebody else who's working on it, you're spying on them. And you'd probably be giving off photons in the room where that person was. But it also appears that you have direct access to the actual information of their thoughts, that you can actually pick up from a universal data bank, or at least in a worldwide data bank, the same information that they already have. So the pineal gland, according to many, many different ancient traditions, appears to be the main access point between that astral body and the physical body. It's the physiological center that determines how psychic information gets in. As you can see here, it's in the middle of the brain, and it is shaped like a pine cone. If you look there on the right, that's a drawing of what the pineal gland looks like. It's actually upside down from where it really is in the brain. But it is a small gland. It's about the shape of a pea. It has kind of a reddish, purplish color inside the brain. And there's some interesting things about it, because when you look at these ancient traditions, we find many, many different traditions giving pine cone type examples in their literature. Now, first of all, we go to Babylon. Babylon has the legend of the primitive mountain. It is said to be the location on Earth where the gods contact humanity. In sculptures of the so-called primitive mountain, it's shaped much like a pine cone, or the idea of the pineal gland. When we go into Babylonian art, we see sculptures of the god Tammuz actually holding a pine cone in his hand, as if this is a very important tool that he's using in his work, which may well be psychic. In Egypt, we have the Ben stone. Stones are often used to depict the pineal gland. You can clearly see in this image that the stone is shaped like the pineal gland. There are two serpents coming at it on either side. Those serpents are called the Uraeus. The energy, which is believed to be coming up from the root chakra through the 33 vertebrae into the brain. Number 33 sounds familiar. 33 vertebrae. Well, one of the things I have in the book is a quotation from Manly Palmer Hall saying that the 33 degrees of Freemasonry actually correspond to the 33 vertebrae in the spine. And that the goal of Masonry is to get the adept to awaken the pineal gland. But as we're going to see, it's not just Masonry that's doing this. It's major world religions of all different varieties. So many of them keep giving us the same metaphor. The Egyptian metaphor is also interesting because you'll notice on either side of that Ben stone are two birds. Those birds are called Bennu. But when the Bennu was translated into Greek, the word got changed to phoenix. So the phoenix is obviously the bird that dies and is reborn. It's consumed in flame.
Welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and we have a special surprise for you. The insider, who I refer to as Paul, and I can reveal for the first time that this man is Emery Smith. You may know him if you ever saw the movie Sirius. Emery, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Dave. I'm so excited to be here. 10 years, in the making of working with you and establishing a great relationship. Basically, you're the reason a lot of my progression in this field of undisclosed information has been brought to me. And at the same time, it's time now to bring it forward, which thanks for helping me get to that point, because as you know, for the past 3 to 5 years, I was kind of just holding on to it.
Now, in the movie Sirius,
yes,
there is an autopsy of a little 6-inch tall, apparently extraterrestrial body.
Correct.
Who in the movie is doing that autopsy?
I was vice president for the CSETI for about 5 years, and what had happened was there was this being, of course, that was taken over by a civilian lab in Spain. And the government actually did have it before anyone else, but no one knows about that. So the thing was, the people I was working with in CSETI decided it'd be a great idea to go over here and let's do an autopsy.
Sure.
And let's get some DNA, because if you get some DNA, well, that not
А где его нет?
Let's get a major university.
Не знаю.
So
Не знаю.
being
Неизвестно. Не знаю. Да, в магазин пошел на сцену. Предлагаешь, пошел в магазин. О. Чё? Я не знаю.
working with tissue from unearthed origin in these compartmentalized programs. I've seen over 3,000 of these things. That it was just a winner for me to be the person to go do the autopsy on the senior team. And I was definitely also assisted by Dr. Stephen Greer and Dr. Janet Bravo. So they were, of course, the physicians there witnessing this and, helping me, harvest this tissue.
I don't think anybody will forgive me if we don't talk, at least in the first episode, we'll get started, about how you came to have multiple medical doctorate level knowledge from classified things.
Well, I
talk about what you did in the military.
Yeah.
This unusual biology.
Yeah, sure. It all started actually when I joined the military at an early age. I was what they call a 90252. But it had to do with being a surgical technician. Just a person who needed choice to the position. And I was also a paramedicist. Then I became a teacher for that very quickly, overnight. And then when I moved to Kirtland Air Force Base, they offered me a special, what we call moonlighting job, they call it. And I was still a kid, you understand. I was very young, but I was, very intelligent and very mature for my age at that time. And I was fascinated when they were putting me in charge of million-dollar equipment that not normal people would be able to even utilize or even not even ready even be able to use for civilians yet.
Right.
So that lured me into working this. Okay, well we're gonna say you're this, Sergeant Smith, but you're really gonna be doing this, and but you're still gonna be getting paid, And I said, okay. So basically, I'm working for civilian department of sex program, but I'm an active duty service member, and it worked out. I knew
was a lot of, I could tell that the people that I was working for in the operating rooms there, it's like, well, why is Smith always leaving every day at noon? Where's he go? Oh, he has a knee issue. He has to go to physical therapy, you know. So down the chain of command, they knew something was going on, but they also had to keep it, you know, justifiable in a way until, let's get him out of here. Let's go try with this, basically dissect tissues of unknown origin. And that's where I got sucked in and was just getting obsessed with what I was doing.
Which you said this was Kirtland Air Force Base?
Yes, this was Kirtland Air Force Base. It's where I started, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was not just working there, I was moonlighting, doing this other stuff after hours, and that had to do with Sandia and Los Alamos labs. The Sandia lab is another secured location on Kirtland. Yeah, it's like a base within a base that goes underground.
So let's start to break into this a little bit. And I've talked to you about this. I've gotten bits and pieces of this from you for a decade. And as time has gone on, you share more, authorize, and tell me more. So let's just put this on record right now. Can you confirm that you have been authorized to disclose what we're talking about now? That this is officially okay?
My NDA has expired, but I am still. I'm not going to talk about something that I don't feel comfortable talking about if I don't believe it's something that will put you or me in harm until that comes. But what I'm saying now, I believe is going to be fine. Okay. I've not been threatened ever for any of that. The only time I was ever threatened is when I brought the DNA back from the Atacama from Spain illegally from Barcelona. And I thought when the government, when I was getting threatened, and they tried 3 assassination attempts on me.
I remember.
It was very horrifying. And I thought it was because that I took the DNA from, you know, over there, brought it here, and snuck it to Stanford, and it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with someone getting upset with me because I resigned, and then putting 3 compartmentalized labs that during my work with this group had their own team, you know, their own vet teams to come and do the little dirty work. But I was able to get out of that, thank goodness, to help from actually the U.S. government and some military and CIA officials, Army and CIA officials really helped out, turned around, directed me back, and it was an opportunity. There was also another colleague of mine, and that working on that out of me, and it was immediately everything stopped, and I thought they just told me when I was taken to the wet room because I was escaping, or I was in Florida getting all these threats. They just flew me right there, and I just said, well, what do I do? Why am I here?
Just so people, in case they don't know, the wet room has got tile on the walls and the floor, a drain in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
And the wet is your blood.
Yeah, it's equipped, this is where they take people and kill them, and it's an easy cleanup. You got a nice big drain, a bunch of hoses, and a huge disinfectant system.
And you knew what this was when they took you into it?
Absolutely.
And you were very intimidated?
I've seen different types of wet rooms, not for humans, but for other things and other compartmentalized projects. But I'd never in Washington, D.C. So they just said, you violated your contract, and I said, before you kill me, could you please show me and tell me where I violated my contract, and I'll be happy with that. I said, you know everything about me. You have your own satellite on it. You know every phone, text message, you know everything. Everything is about you. It's like, what did I do? Just tell me. And 8 hours later, sweating in this room, they came back and said, we're very sorry, Mr. Smith. It was an internal problem, and you will never have to worry about that again. I apologize. And it was a really beautiful moment, because the first time that I felt like the alliance of people in there were like trying to protect me or trying to do something positive besides expose me or hurt my family or,
go to Sandia.
Yes.
And
well, I'm already living there on the base.
Okay.
I already have my own place on the base. And I work at a hospital off the base. The VA Curlin Air Force Base Hospital is actually off base, which is odd. And don't forget, Curlin Air Force Base is the largest base in the world, and that's where they used to hide the nukes in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
I've shown, my handlers and people just flying over there to see the doors, just giant doors, but they're not used for that.
Well, we have Mexico and Nevada near each other, and of course, we have Area 51 in Nevada. We're all connected. So, have you ever ridden the sub-shuttle system?
Only from Sandia to Los Alamos. I might have one to Dulce and back, but I don't know where it's at. Because they had to do something. There's 4 of them. And these magnet trains. But there's, from what I just recently heard, they're all upgraded, updated. I think they're more like vacuum tube battery. And that's some other stuff I've worked with. Just because of the tissue regeneration stuff I was involved with, a lot of the craft that I was kind of brought into different projects to look at the craft because the craft were actually alive. The craft were alive and they were conscious.
This is similar to what we heard from David Adair, where he described going to Area 51 and seeing this power system that was actually a living being. But it was this very large thing that had looked like a skeleton over the surface of it. It had tissue components, but it also had technology components. It was some weird blend of technology.
That's right. That's right. It also, and it's already started, and I was part of that movement too, where we formulated tissue to integration. Yeah, so that's a good one to get into at some point because that's what led us in the underground project to say, if we can have tissue and titanium to be together, and I can make your bone tissue and titanium, you're going to be pretty strong, baby. It's going to be hard for you to break that. And then add stem cells to that and play the rich plasma, which increases bone density up to sometimes 10 times.
Wow.
Your own bone. Keep that in mind.
So that sounds a lot like Wolverine in the X-Men movie.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's osseointegration, where they just basically, made him all these steel protective plates, but he also had a super ability to heal very quickly, right? And that's the secret. That's what they all remember. How do we have no downtime? And now, not do we not have any downtime, and not just for the super soldier programs that are part of it. I'm talking about the soldier programs that you don't hear about, the more upper level, Cabal Majestic type, secret corporation levels, where they're trying to anti-age you. And now that this new protein has just been discovered, A2M, alpha-2 macroglobulin, yeah, holy moly, they just turned back time. And now that that's out, I can tell you right now, probably in 5 to 10 years, it'll probably take 10 years for the FDA. What this does is, it's a protease inhibitor, which means it blocks all inflammation, so the body can heal itself. See, everything you have, that you need to survive forever, or for a very long time, is already in your body. The problem is, these fields around us, and the foods we eat, everything is poisoned. So it makes us have inflammation. And I don't care if you're in a car accident or if you have a disease, it all starts with inflammation. Now, if I can stop inflammation, your body will heal itself naturally. Very exciting. And that by the way, that A2M, I did not discover that. I was just part of a project that specialized in that. That's why I learned about it here. So I'm so excited now. Here was a billion all over.
So let's talk about how you got started in extraterrestrial biology. Were you aware at first of autopsy and disease?
No.
How did they do that?
And it was really funny too, because the entrance to where I was going
get in there, and there's this piece of tissue, and it's all positive pressure source. And so I go in there, and you do scrub out, just like a surgeon scrubs and puts his gowns on and the hoods and stuff. You do go in there, do all that. And you label like you would, like when you were in the biology school at frog. You know, you're like, God, okay, this is a muscle, this is a tongue, or whatever. And I was just there to label and take small samples and put them in these different types of jars and vats and containers, which I would then push through a wall, a drawer in a wall, and someone else would take it, and that was it. So I was basically taking tissue samples from whatever piece of tissue it was. Some looked like salmon, some looked like, I don't even know, can't even explain it. But then every 3 to 6 months you get a upper security clearance. So I stayed with that.
So you had described to me before that you called them salmon fillets. Like when you first got started, would it be like a square, like this big or something?
Yeah, it was like a perfectly cut square.
Okay.
With arteries, veins, nerves, sometimes just different types of tissues, different types of cellular tissues. Sometimes you would find cartilage in a weird area, you know. And sometimes you see neural matter. But it was always different. And then the samples started getting more intact, where you could tell that, whoa, this is a hand, you know. And I could not tell you what that is at that point. I couldn't even say, and you're not allowed to ask anything. You just do that, and you don't talk to anybody, and that's your job. And
what have you told your friends or your family? Like, were you given security briefings about that?
I would be killed.
Really?
Yes.
Now you say a hand. I mean, describe what the hand might look like. Give me one example of a hand.
Well, imagine every creature on this planet that has a hand. And evolution, then, about 1 billion years from now, to have the 5-star...
Like the human star.
Human star. And so you might have a very small hand that might look like a frog, but it's just a little bit different. But it's a palm. Like, it's got prints. It's got nails. It could be something like a raccoon. But we're talking everything's different now. The most fascinating ones were the giant insect. These hands were just enormous. And they were not only living tissue, they were plant tissue as well.
Really?
Yes. So they had some sort of thing they were making or growing that involved plant tissue with some other sort of living tissue, which they would mix many different types of hybrid tissues together. It's old school, everybody knows that in these projects, and it's probably heard about it out there. They've mixed every type of animal tissue, DNA with human, to see what happens. You know?
Like Dulce, New Mexico.
Yeah, all that kind of crazy stuff. So, and then they started adding, and then when they started getting things from up there, that's when they got. So whether or not this was an extraterrestrial, I couldn't say at that time, because I know they could have risked whatever this was and killed it, chopped it in petty pieces, sent it all these places. You know, I wasn't the only technician doing this. So,
one of the things that I'd really like to drill into is if you could give us a much more exacting description of the facility that you worked in. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about even something as simple as, is there a parking lot, or do you have an underground parking garage?
Yes, exactly. I'd like to hear the stories about people flying out of Nevada or whatever area 51, running like one way in and out. Well, these places, there's multiple places in and out, depending on where you're going to be working in what section. And they're very large underground facilities. I mean, we're talking, you know, up to 100 acres of multi-level facilities down there with many special wings that do certain things. Some works on energy propulsion, some works on regeneration, some works, you know,
I was already living on the base, it was easy because I just rode my bicycle to this small building. So the small building, which you would just think a fire tower or whatever, is actually, just in the middle of the big area. So you go in and you take the elevator down and you get on a big hallway escalator, and the escalator kind of just like you would at an airport. And then the escalator's put on. You're on the escalator for about 10 minutes. Wow. So you're actually going somewhere else. Yes, very fast. Really, yeah. You can actually sit down.
What are you seeing? Is it a tunnel?
Just a tunnel. It's a hallway. It's white and has a black marble ceiling. Like black awnings. I don't know what it is. It's also they see through it, but it's very different. Back then it was very different than it was. And the tunnel is not big.
Do you think that one of these underground machines could have made that tunnel?
Oh yeah, it was the heat one, the one that melts rock and all the lava. They basically make lava tubes now. Right. And that's what they're still doing. All over. Making an underground, freeway to go anywhere you want in the world.
Now, when we think of an escalator, normally there's vertical metal grooves that are all side by side, and there's teeth between each layer.
No. This is completely flat and made of some sort of polycarbonate, and you couldn't see through it. And you can stand or sit in the chair.
There's a chair.
Yeah.
But you're on like a track.
You're on a track.
So what you're describing to me sounds like an extremely cool, futuristic tunnel that you're riding. Like already you're pretty inspired.
They make that tunnel look like a turtle. No offense to the guy who built that. But it's just like, at that time, you have to understand here. Early 90s, like, fantastic. So when you get to the end, you go to your check station.
What does it look like? Where are you? What do you see? You were in a tunnel.
Yeah.
What do you see once you get off the
There's glass doors there, seamless. They open up like you would see in Star Trek, like, they open up.
Oh, wow.
And there's these two stations. And if there's someone in both stations, you have to wait outside the glass, like the other people might be before you check in.
They're being interviewed or something?
Yeah, they're being checked in.
Okay.
And so there's two other glass stations. So when you go, this opens up. Now you have a security check back here and a security check back here. And
what would happen with these soldiers at the desks? What do you?
Well, they check your palm print, your retina scan, and then you show them your card. Very generic card.
And does the soldier talk to you? Do you have questions you have to answer?
Yeah, they ask questions. Anywhere from just a couple, or sometimes they'd like to just go ahead. So they were doing this with people, and they had these special animals. They were dogs, but special dogs. And
special meaning what? They looked at the dog?
They were somehow trained or maybe hybrided. They were a little bit larger, looked like a German Shepherd Mastiff mix, and a Blacko.
Really?
And they were there, and they were in like a compartment, but they can smell you as you walk by them. For sure, you cannot walk by them without them smelling you. And they always know how to. They just right away smell. And then you gotta go through two more doors, and now you're in the locker room, and they're gender. Female locker room, male locker room. So in your locker room, you take your clothes off, and you put these scrubs on. They're kind of like scrubs in a jumpsuit. Then you go outside the next door, okay, which it has nothing to do now. There's a whole wall there. Now you're in another corridor, and there's a room on the right, and that room is where your orders are, and that's where you pick up your folder and your band.
Okay.
So your
Does
folder.
somebody tell you your orders?
Well, they're usually just there, and sometimes there are like we call them the managers.
Okay.
Are in there because there's something they want to say to you. They already know a half hour away that you're coming. Right. So everyone knows everything, especially now you got your band on. So they come in, and they'll say,
hey, we got this, they'll debrief you on like, you know, we got this, and just make sure you do that and that. And then you get out, and then there's the white guards now, and they escort you. Or if there's not a white guard there, you follow the color strips. And
what are color strips?
Color strips are when you're walking down this beautiful white hallway. They're wings of operating rooms. Okay, pressurized operating rooms. Looks like you're like getting in a 747 jumbo jet because the doors are like these cool big hexagon vacuum sucked doors. And the colors correlate to the wing you're going to work in that day. Just that just tells you how many wings go down there. Each wing could have up to 30 to 50 rooms.
Wow.
Yeah, of these types of vacuum rooms.
And how many floors do you think there are?
Oh, where I was?
Yeah.
Oh, over 50.
Wow.
Over 50 floors, just in the medical one.
So once we understand exactly what you're doing, then the number of extraterrestrial bodies that these guys have must be staggering.
Oh, it's unreal.
So, and you said you never really saw much repetition in the type of stuff that you saw once we get to that point in the story.
Right. No, it was different.
They're always different.
Always different. But the thing was did they grow that here? You know, and it's
you don't really know.
It's a disinformation too, because they're going to things at you. In case one day I saw a 10-foot reptilian going down being escorted down.
You're saying you did see a reptilian?
I'm saying I saw a lot of 3D printed being not. You know, I do not know. They're really good at sci-fi effects too, to mess with scientists or to threaten them if they feel they're about to go public and no talk when you work there. So the best way to do that is to show them something that's completely horrifying, and then they think they're going to go say something or leave or do whatever. But now that they know it really does exist, but does it? Is it real?
Right.
I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know. Just because you see it doesn't mean it's real.
Right.
Same thing with the new satellites we have. We're projecting stuff on cars, you know, on the ground and cast shadows now. Palpable, you know, systems, you know, that look like I'm right here, but I'm really not right here.
You're saying they could project something that looks just like a car with a shadow, but it's not really a car? It's just a projection of a satellite?
It's a projection of a car that is palpable. Wow. But you can go right through it if you were to really walk up to it.
Wow.
But enough to put that amount of atoms into an area and reflect light.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Which is a whole other ball.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to like say, yeah, I saw this craft, or I saw this ET, or I saw this hybrid, or whatever, unless I actually touched it myself and walked through it. That's the
okay. Well, since we have talked about those types of beings before, instead of giving you any front loading, could you be more specific in describing? You said it was 10 feet tall, but could you describe a little more about what it actually looked like?
I was just using that as an example. Right. But I will describe other ones that I've seen.
Okay.
And other ones I've seen were anywhere from 8 to 13 feet tall, down to just 22 inches.
But some of them you said were alive, like they might be carrying it as if it was their prisoner?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's, you know, the reason I kind of opted out, you know, after 10 years, because I felt that something wasn't going right, because one of the bodies I received was warm.
Right.
So I knew it just, obviously, so then, you know, I put in my thing, got honorably discharged, and got out of the contract work, and my mouth shut.
So a warm body means that it might have been killed right before you had an autopsy.
Correct. Right. But I have seen, you know, live extraterrestrials, you know, face to face.
Or something that was ET-like.
ET-like, yeah. Or hybrid, or clone. You know, clone from a ET.
Let's get back now to your colored lines.
Yes.
I want to get us into the room before we end this episode.
Sure.
What happens when you get to your door?
Well, every corridor, don't forget, has the white security guys.
Okay.
So you're never gonna not see these guys.
Right.
They're posted on every corridor. Corridors can go very, very far.
There's no private area.
No way, no private area. Yeah. So what you got to do is, when you get there, then you have to go through the pressurized area to put your suit on.
Okay.
Okay, and that's the clean area, the sterile area.
So there's like an airlock in between your and your operating room.
And
Now
those two technicians run that with the two soldiers, right? The white guys.
So you have your struts already, but then you put on additional equipment.
You have to put, you have to put on the suit. It's like
what
a
is the suit?
It's a very lightweight spacesuit, like you'd see in the movies. It's all glass. You have your own little oxygen that you plug into the wall of your unit, so you don't have to carry anything. It's very lightweight. It's made out of like a Gore-Tex polyurethane substance. It's waterproof. It's completely airproof. I mean, you have your own air recycling in there. You have your own speaker comm unit. You can communicate. And the gloves that you're wearing on these suits are the same gloves we use in surgery. They're very ambidextrous, very sterile. Sometimes you'll have to use certain gloves that are made out of something else that I don't know, because they don't want certain like latex or non-latex things to be touching to actually destroy whatever you're touching. So there's different types of suits for different types of autopsies.
So you said, I'm trying to see this, you have like a hose that you're going to plug into the wall once you go
so
through
you
the
get
airlock?
through the airlock, and you're escorted by, the security guys. And they open the airlock, just like you would see like on a Navy ship. Like on a, some have clamps and some have these little things. And then you go in, and you're suited, and you just plug your stuff in. There's two cords, oxygen and an electrical comm cord. Okay. And you can still hear them if they wanted to talk to you in there without that, in case it failed.
So could you just briefly describe what it looks like once you're inside the OR now?
It's seamless. It's got a white pinkish tinge to the walls and everything. It's kind of oval, and all the entire walls actually can come out in different types of sections. And the sections might be the body will be on this board. And then the other section will have all these other tools you're going to need to do it, to do whatever you're gathering, right? Or for the testing.
So once you actually see these salmon fillets, you said it started with salmon fillets, but then you upgraded at some point to like an arm with a hand. What was the time interval between salmon fillets and arms, and then eventually full bodies? Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that took about, I think, 16 months. You get 3 to 6 month security upgrades if you behave and keep your mouth shut. I mean, it happens fast as they go through so many people. And I really wanted to learn this. I was so captivated by it, so I did what they wanted me to do. And then it got, more and more stricter, and I would get better and better samples. And it was frustrating because, you're not allowed to ask, well, what is this from? Where is it? Or how do you get it? Or you're just there to do the sampling and get out, And then once the bodies came, that was probably after maybe 10 months. When, like, partial bodies, not full bodies. I didn't get full bodies till way at the end, and then I got
Would you describe for us the very first partial body that you saw? What did it look like? And we'll end the episode with that.
Yeah, it was a leopard. It was colored skin. It was a torso. It looked like it got blown up. And it had reptilian skin. It had normal body parts like we have on our insides. So I did see a spleen, hard lung. The face was too distorted and destroyed, so I couldn't tell you what the face looked like. But it had perfect normal bone structure like we do, and it was just the skin was beautiful. It was iridescent blue leopard skin. It reminded me of growing up in the Everglades with the leopard frogs, where they have those round circles and peacock feathers mixed.
Really?
Yeah, that color, that distinct round, but very smooth skin.
Did it scare you the first time you got a partial body? Were you like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Yeah, I was in shock. They're measuring my heart rate, by the way, the whole time. They're measuring how I'm reacting, so I kept cool, and, they didn't ask me, hey, are you all right? One time. Because
because I was only allowed to operate on one part of the body. And I wanted to know more, you know. Because there's certain tissues I've realized from clones than from real extraterrestrials and from humans, that the clone tissue isn't as strong as the ones they grow. Our tissue is like really strong, and depending on how long they've been, of course, dead, or how long it's been frozen, or whatever conditions they have had it in. But when you get fresh stuff, and you know, sometimes we'll tell you this, sometimes it won't, and you can tell that the ones that are fake are more friable. So that means you barely try to get something out of them.
Today, what are some of the events that have just happened?
Neutral, you know, I don't even.
Right.
And recently, you know, it's been getting a little violent.
We have a photograph of a head-on collision that you suffered 30 minutes after I leaked more of your information in an article.
Yeah.
And you're very lucky to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been shot at, been stabbed, been jumped by 3 agents, gotten my butt kicked. I mean, I've been through it all. But it was, I don't believe it was because of that stuff. I think when they knew I went energy, when I started doing more of the energy stuff, they really got angry. Yeah. And that's where I lost everything. They broke into my house. But, I mean, rammed my concrete gate down, you know, where all this stuff was stored, and, you know, cut into the walls were things and safes were hidden that you can only know by satellite using. These people definitely had perfect satellite imagery of, you know, I know about the satellites very well, and the stuff they can do with them, and they can look into every brick and every wall of the house.
Wow, it's unbelievable. I'm very glad that you made it here alive, that we're doing this now. We're going to try to get as much on camera as we can for your safety.
Right.
And we will be back next time. This is Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, here with Paul, who we now have revealed is Emery Smith. And thank you for watching.